Okay, here we are midway through the third age of the game. And what has happened so far in this era, at least? Well, in the first half of the era, for the most part, countries have been kind of rebuilding and consolidating. They've been in a lot of trouble because of religious or other unrest. Let's take a look at... So first of all, for the religious situation, Protestantism has spread... Skipping Brandenburg, still Catholic, cutting over, and up through the Scandinavian areas. That's one big lump of Protestant territory, which means it only fires off once on each time. Now, beyond that, well, the Scandinavian area can fire off more, but it's got nowhere to go. Likewise, the British Isles, they're completely Protestant. They've got nowhere to go. However, last turn, or last round, whatever you want to call it, a counter-reformation has started in southern France, northern Italy, and that may be able to fight things off a little bit. It's probably too late, though. Let's look at the countries. We'll save Turkey for last, even though the initial starting place is with the Austrians, but that's no fun for me from here. So France and Spain, well, France is largely overrun by Protestantism. They cut a deal with Spain in terms of the Counter-Reformation. They kind of wish they hadn't. They wish they had let it die on the vine because it's looking like they have to go Protestant. And they may well do so. They've got a fair number of cubes, but the unrest is just too hard. They have to fight it every turn. That's basically why this last round, or the earlier part of the era, has not had many wars or anything. There's not much to trigger them, and the unrest is just too much to cope with. You can't really fight an effective war. There's not been events to trigger them, though, which is important too. Spain is in a weird sort of religious situation. They lost southern Morocco here. There are other areas they have Protestantism, but they also have diverse faiths. They're just faced with a lot of problems. They may end up having to go Protestant as well. England? Well, England is fine religiously, but they're still in the midst of their civil war. Oh, by the way, Spain still has Cromwell in charge. England has an interregnum. We're going to have to pour my tea. Is facing a more complicated religious situation than perhaps anyone. Spain's is pretty twisted. But with Austria's, we have a lot of Protestantism encroaching, but we also have a lot of Catholic influence. We have territories to the south that are still Catholic. We have the Hungarian areas that are vassals that are Catholic. Any way we turn isn't going to be pleasant. We also are facing an interregnum. Out of the people so far, England's a little low on cubes. Not many advisors, not much to do about it. Everybody else, I think, well, Turkey's a little low on cubes too, although they have advisors and do not have an interregnum. They have a lousy leader. We have Spanish succession coming up. That's still here, sitting there, but we have the decline of the Habsburgs card, which brings Charles II in as the King of Spain, perhaps. I think Oliver will contest that, and if the Spaniards can avoid picking that card themselves, they would prefer not to. They would prefer to just shelf the ruler. So yeah, the Austrians have been gaining territory. You can see they've grabbed Saxony. They've got a vassal in Brandenburg. They've got an alliance with Bavaria. They're becoming quite a little powerhouse in the empire. And nobody wants to fuck with that, basically. Now, the Turks could, because the imperial boundaries don't grow. You can't just claim, hey, Hungary is part of the empire now. Although I would argue that there was a route towards that, that it would have been possible had the Habsburgs become real emperors, like in the sense that the Ottonians were, that they could have expanded the empire to the east and it would have been acceptable. You know, I mean, if the emperor says it's true under that kind of circumstance, the emperor had quite a bit of power in that period. And if they could restore imperial prestige, I don't know, is 6 enough? You know, what does that mean? Hey, I don't know. But they are very powerful right now. Poland, well, this happened a while ago, but I think during this era, they vassalized all of Lithuania and have kind of been trying to swallow that into their situation. They've had some religious and other revolts, I think mainly religious. They had the Bohemian issue, which is kind of religious based. Kind of weird thing about that, the 30 Years' War was triggered a little while ago. That's how Austria ended up with Saxony, out of all things. But it kind of hit both Poland with its external Bohemian and the interior of the empire as two separate things, and didn't really feel like the 30 Years' War at all. It felt like Austria goes and picks on Saxony and it's all over. You know, there's no Denmark comes sweeping in or anything like that. And there doesn't appear to be anything to force that issue, which kind of disturbs me because the old EU, the 30 Years' War is a multi-turn event. Probably half a period in this, which would be 2 rounds. And it kind of ran for 2 rounds without being called the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War card triggered during a particular period, and the Bohemian letter caused the Saxony War somehow. But yeah, the old EU, generates these stages of the war where Wallenstein's available and the Danes are invading, and then that switches over and the Swedes under Adolphus come in. And then, well, we don't have an Adolphus. Denmark is the dominant power right now, with pretty much what they had going into the era, like what they historically had, a little bit more. But yeah. And then finally to Turkey, who really has just been kind of trying to maintain the things they swallowed up from the Mamluks. And they're losing some of them. They really haven't been able to expand at all. Their cube rate hasn't been that great. Right now they have Murad IV, who's not a bad leader. They had a much worse leader before. I believe it was the Sultan Christopher or something like that. I don't know. Elsewhere, exploration, etc. It's ramped up a little bit. The French are beginning to explore to see if there's a route to India around Africa. Nobody's bothered to go that way. We have both Danes and Portuguese. The Portuguese up in the Hudson Bay area. The Danes, of course, down in the Caribbean. Spain has increased however many areas they have. Ooh. I did not roll for those suckers. Okay, so last turn, quite a while ago, there should be rolls for that. And that. I would have lost a cube. I'm going to charge $2 for the cube. And the other thing is a troop. I think I would have gotten it back anyway. If there had been a revolt, that would be fine. Then we'd have, I guess, a troop, a soldier there that I'd have to go put down, which would be like the Indian. Those are Indian uprisings or something like that. They're not. It's not like the Americas revolting, right? Those settlements are not stable right now. But anyway, this is fine. I completely forgot to even check over there. And yeah, I mean, North America, Central America, it's getting a little filled up, but it's nowhere near what it was historically. And part of the reason for that, the early period of the game, Portugal does nothing because it's not a player. Problem with the game, admitted. There's a different scenario that focuses on the exploration side of the game. That's from the original set, like the base set, which I think doesn't have as many countries, as many kingdoms in any of the scenarios. I think it has 4 instead of 6. So it's kind of weird. They actually may have added extra piece sets for that. I'd have to grab the book. I got the wrong book. But yeah, and that focus is more on hey, Western Europe and the expansion into the rest of the world. Is that a better one? I don't know. So if you were doing 4 countries with that, you have Spain, England, and France, and maybe Portugal. Do you really want to leave Central Europe out of this? They're pretty damn important. Italy, I don't know. If it is just a 4 counter mix for the original game, just from here over, then that too is not enough. And yeah, let me take a peek at that. Everything in that first scenario book is 4 players or less, so I'm guessing you have 4 counter sets for that. They add 2 more with the deluxe set. I would argue you could do this side of the board with 6 pretty easily, right? I'm not sure what, because again, like Denmark should be something of a power at one point in the game. So if you were playing like a campaign period for this, Denmark should be a power at one point. The Dutch should definitely be a power at a different point in the game. Sweden, Austria, maybe. But yeah, for the exploration side of the things, you probably get away okay with Portugal, Spain, France, and England, and the Dutch. You leave the Dutch out, it no longer works. But then, you're kind of throwing out the important European considerations, right? Because Austria is a major counterweight to France throughout the game. They're, except for during the 7 Years' War, basically. Austria is almost always a counterweight to the French power. Anyway, so yeah, we've got kind of an interesting situation going. I really wish there was room for more players. That was always the thing with the old EU too, though, right? There weren't enough player spots in the game. That's easier to convert over, I guess, although the events don't really support like making Poland a player, and they don't support making Sweden or Prussia players until their time period, right? So you might be able to fit something in with an early Polish player. So I'm looking at a 7-player game for the original. Adding an early Poland is of interest, but Poland has to stay around longer than some of the other powers. Venice is an iffy power in the original. They don't do a hell of a lot. You could probably pull them out and replace them with Poland. But the problem is that Venice turns into the Netherlands at a certain point, around the time of the Dutch Revolt. And Poland's not ready to disappear at that point. So, and you could make an argument that, okay, well, yeah, nah, I don't know. Yeah. And you still have the problem of like Russia and stuff like that. So it's really hard. That's why they made an EU 7, and then I think like they made a 7-player game, but they expanded the game significantly. They put all kind of different trading goods in and changed the game significantly in a lot of ways that require you make a new game. You print and play a new game basically of it. New events, all kind of stuff. The events wouldn't be too big a deal, but the counter sets are, and they're not just, hey, we should give Poland a couple more armies. I could fudge that, right? No, we should, significantly change the rules of the game and upgrade it. And I really wish they hadn't done that. I wish somebody had given an intermediate version of that. And now it's up to like EU9, I think, which, you know, I don't know. It's just, that's a hell of a lot of players to add. I feel like there's room for one more player in that set, and it just needs some sort of set of changes. As to this, this is painful. I mean, I love what I'm seeing, but it's painful to me that Portugal is not being active the way Portugal should. That Russia is just a no man's land that nobody can enter. And there's sort of a power vacuum on Poland's east. Now, I gotta tell you, until about this period, so this is the thing. I think you could do the Portugal-Russia transfer. I think leave Russia as it is. Let Poland expand into Russia even as a player. Maybe make it dynamic over there. Because Russia is really fucking weak historically in this period. Like up until about now. But on the other hand, Portugal, and it's why the old EU did the Portugal to Russia switch. What other switches might be possible? Yeah, I'd really like to see somebody taking the Netherlands on, though, as well. And it's tough to say that there's anybody who could go away. I like some of the solutions that the original EU had dealing with Austria. It was a mighty, it's a mighty power in the game, but it's not played by a player. And I feel like that works kind of nicely. There isn't really room for mighty powers in this game. The closest thing we have, Portugal, Denmark, Mamluks, are these long-term dynamic non-player realms. They're not that dynamic. I feel like you need something that's like a player and maybe uses the bot rules to make it work. You really need the additional counter mixes and stuff. And when you're paying, for expensive wooden pieces instead of counter sheets, both in terms of box fill and in terms of what you actually get. The old EU, printing costs were less back then, came with armies, control markers, leaders for all the countries. I mean, all of them, basically. Yeah, I mean, you had something for all of them. Now, Hesse might have one army and 2 detachments. It doesn't need more than that. That's fine. And then there was also, the focus on the more military side of the game. This game seems to focus. It's hard to tell. I think this focuses. So I think the old EU focused on 2 things, which was colonization and with trade maybe thrown in as sort of a sideline to that. I mean, trade was important to the game, but it wasn't the same kind of thing. You'd have merchant fleets and stuff all out there, but they just generated income, So you had colonization and military operations, and that's really it. The exploration, colonization, and the military operations. And trade was sort of somewhere in between, kind of weird little place. That's fine. But this, man, you're dealing with the size of the different cities. You're dealing, the diplomacy system is, I think, richer. In terms of how it handles things. The event system's more flexible, just a whole lot of stuff. And here I am going into review type stuff again but I won't remember it by the time I get to the review, will I? I think I want to go into before I give this up as to points that feel a little incongruous. Often it was the case that instability, especially religious issues, would cause wars. Now, that's baked into the event deck. It's baked into the event deck or the event book in the original as well, as opposed to being a mechanism that just sort of happens. So, things like the French wars of religion. Hey, I have a game on that. Just got one. I just played it not long ago. One of the two up over there on top. The French Wars of Religion, the Netherlands situation, a lot of that was caused not just by, hey, I want to own this stuff. Maybe if I were more tolerant, things would go better or whatever. No, they're caused more by actual attempts to impose a religious conversion as being a big deal. Now, maybe I'm misplaying things. There's rules for, invoking conversions here. There are reasons to do so. Might be of value. For example, might have made more sense for Austria to have converted Saxony rather than taking them. But I'm greedy, man. I want my income, I want my manpower and all that. I figure I can go Protestant if I need to. Trying to stem the Protestantism seemed less valuable. Now, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe this extension... Oh, by the way, Bohemia is Protestant. Poor Poland. Maybe it would have been more valuable to try to stem it. Maybe those kind of things make more sense. And I'm just, naively trying to pad my influence. But I kind of also was seeing the flow of Protestantism as inevitable in this particular game because of the lack of the Counter-Reformation. But we're definitely not seeing as much detail about any kind of military actions going on. So, for example, the Dutch revolt. Look, there's a Spanish army sitting here in the midst of the Netherlands, right? There's a Spanish territory claimed by the Netherlands still there. That may be the 80 Years' War happening up there. That may be the crap that's going on, and I'm just, not playing it out the same way. Still, at this same time, the Dutch were, taking over the merchant world. And that's something that's not represented, which is merchant activities by the non-player realms. Not the bots. I'm assuming the bots do their merchant stuff, whatever. I'm assuming that that's basically a system to make countries that you're not playing play like countries you should be playing. And that's fine. No, rather things like minor countries, like Venice after they leave the game still has merchant fleets around. Some little countries have them. Things like Oman has, I think, a merchant fleet. It's just a matter of everybody who would kind of has merchants where they would. And the Dutch are a particularly interesting issue just because the merchants from the Netherlands area were active as citizens of, the Spanish inheriting that territory and whatnot. But yeah, going broader in terms of going earlier and later for that matter, in terms of time period, makes this game kind of take a bigger bite. Like, it feels to me like there's a reason for the original EU's delimitations. The Burgundian inheritance is de facto at that point. The Bohemian-Hungarian inheritance, it's set up, right? All this stuff is there. And if you're trying to represent all of this stuff that happens in the first half of the first era or in the first era or whatever, you're taking, a different world in a lot of ways. And stretching it back. Now, there are several different worlds already in the era of the original EU. So I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying you're biting off more by extending it in both directions. Computer game can do it. On a board game, I don't know. Because, and even with the computer game, it's complicated, right? Because who gets this inheritance? The neat thing about this game is it could have gone to a number of different people. Sure, Spain wants it. Historically, they didn't get it. Historically, they did not get it the way it's gotten in this game. Like, Austria got it, and it was passed to Charles V as part of the no, it all went to Charles V, but it was passed not to Ferdinand, but rather to Philip in terms of like who's going to inherit the Burgundian alliance. So, you know, the Austrian Habsburg branch got it. All of it went to Charles V, something that's not able to be represented in either game very effectively. There's some special rules to allow, you know, Charles to operate the Austrians a little bit more freely than they're operated later by the Habsburgs. But yeah. Okay. The first of the players, the Austrians, keeping the same goals, but because I can't do anything until I do these, basically. I ended up grabbing my 3 cards. Man of the Church, useful for fighting religious issues. Revolutionary Ideas, yeah, not really useful, but it's an advisor in a slot that I don't have one for. And then I drew this new alliance as well. Now, I don't have a lot of money, so I spent $6 out of my 10, and I'm in debt. But this gives me a royal, which I don't have. Now, there is almost certainly a royal in these 2 parts of the deck. I'm guessing. I don't know that for sure, but I definitely don't know which one it's in. You know, I'm just assuming that there's one. I can't think of an emperor who's particularly notable at this time, though. So like the Turks, maybe there's an argument to be made that, well, if there aren't really great ones, well, maybe you're not getting anything. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe the only way you're going to get one is through here. I don't know. You know, I wouldn't have guessed that Charles II of Spain would have a card, to tell you the truth. Although I would have guessed that he'd have an event. So, you know, it kind of makes sense. Lost because most things in the game that come over here, you can do. These are general goals. Having 4 or more core provinces on the board doesn't really feel like, I think it's core province markers, doesn't really feel like something I control. It feels like something that comes from the deck and really from country-specific events. I'm wondering if there's something that I'm missing. Sometimes can be placed via mission reward. That's all I see. Use the integrate area action on a development card. Okay. So yeah, it's we haven't been seeing people using that action on development cards because there's like money to be gained through those cards. And Spain here is sitting on one and they didn't use it. Why didn't they use it? I think, let's see. Well, they got 5 cubes. Oh, no. They got 3 cubes there. They might have actually been able to fire one off that I didn't use. I'm not sure. But yeah, they really ought to pay attention to that. That's not so much for the core provinces, but for changing the religions. The missionaries are on the development card, if I recall correctly. That's why I picked it up. Let's not bump everything. Yeah, the missionaries are on there, and they are very powerful. So, in this situation, too bad I can't turn them to counter-reform, right? Poland managed to get a lot of what they wanted with their cards. They got a Man of the Church. You know, those are so useful in general. I'm just going to keep it. I can convert an area either from Orthodox or Protestant. I'm more scared of the Protestant areas, to be honest. But on the other hand, they probably won't come my way. And I have to pick them off carefully. So if I pick this off, that creates another little place. So that's no good. So I gotta work at the edges and work my way in, just so that big block of Protestants always just keeps going westward. That's okay. I'm going to keep the Man of the Church for that. Remember, I have tons of money. The thing I kept the counter-espionage. Oh, should I? Might as well. My ruler is sick. I don't have another ruler. It's only $2, and like I said, I have hordes of money. But the biggie I wanted was the commercial growth. That allows me to take the reincorporate Mazovia, and now I can do that. Of course, it gives me claims to stuff I don't really need, but it gives me a point, and it clears this so that I can start doing other missions maybe that have been denied me. So I had tons of money, decides to keep all their cards, even though one of them, the logistics master here, well, I got a guy there for it. It's kind of iffy, but I think I'm going to be going to war this turn. And being able to move 2 armies at once is particularly valuable. I can activate 2 armies at once. It doesn't say... It's a little weird here. Activate 2 of your armies on your turn and resolve battles after completing all movement. What it doesn't say is whether or not I can do sieges in those battles or whatever. This is kind of the equivalent of the $100 move off EU, off the old EU, which is actually that you can move all your stuff into enemy provinces, conduct sieges, exploration, everything, all over the place. It's a really huge thing. You almost never do it, but it's a very powerful move if you're a very wealthy country. This game doesn't have anything along those lines except maybe you have tons and tons of cubes, but you still have to play out the pulsing, and the turn could end before you get it. Anyway, I'm looking at launching an attack. The 2 extra bucks isn't going to cost me much. I'm not over my 5 cards, plus I'm going to spend cards elsewhere. And, you know, I mean, it's just, why not hold cards in this case? I was aiming for maybe trying to absorb Tunisia and control the Barbary coast. I had some vague thoughts about attacking Austria, get the Hungarian claims that I have. That's another one of my goals. But it feels like this is the easiest one to do. Austria does not look terribly weak right now. Even though they're in an interregnum, I can't really tell. Yes, they're short on cash. So maybe it wouldn't have been a bad turn to do it because they can't afford to throw themselves into bankruptcy. But I made the decision to go this way. That's often the case, right? When you're playing at a table with, 5 other people, there's a good chance that you look over, you see one thing. Wow, they got a lot of troops, they got some cubes, they got cards. Yeah, they can probably sustain a war, and you don't notice, yeah, they're in debt up to their ass, man. That's sort of the beauty of playing solo the way I do, right? Those kind of mistakes I love. Those are exactly the kind of mistakes that get made at the table, right? So they really, really add to the feeling that I'm actually just playing the game. I'm sure that there are people who, when they're playing solo, optimize everything out and they're just perfect, right? Maybe they're the same way when they're playing the game. Boy, are those people annoying, man. when you're playing opposed with people. Not people who are just very good at doing things, but people who take their time optimizing everything out and figuring everything out and getting it right. You can't really blame people like me who take at least I can't because they're like me, right? No, who take a whole lot of time because they can't even fucking get a clue, right? But when people are there and, obviously just taking up everybody's time and getting the perfect move. Whereas what I feel like I get into is this, I don't see anything I can do that makes any goddamn sense. And this really happens to me in Age of Renaissance. And I fear it would happen in this game if I played it opposed as well. That I'd feel so overwhelmed, especially since I would probably be mastering the rules and trying to help everybody with those. Although that kind of helps in a way. If nobody else knows the rules and I'm working through them, I kind of don't mind that somebody's taking the time while, I'm working to get other people up to speed and whatnot, to get a really, really perfect setup. But it's kind of cool to see that happen. I'm like, wow, wish I could do that. But I couldn't even if I wasn't, trying to explain the rules to people and stuff. The vacillation of Savoy has convinced me to go with Italian ambitions instead. It's not really something I can do either, but I'm concentrating any colonization I have in Africa right now. So North America doesn't make sense. I got one I can go into the East Indies that doesn't really make sense. So I'm gonna go ahead with these, but gotcha. Right. D connects to D. Okay. So I'm really not too focused on any of these. I might be able to play something off them, depending on events, whatever. I drew another subjugate, holding it. Might end up using one of them to grab whatever Lorraine is it? No, it's Luxembourg, right? Luxembourg over there. But my big plan is to switch over to Protestant. I looked up the effects of it. Yeah, it sucks. My stability is going to drop way down. But on the bright side, I pulled a development card, which is going to allow me to either get some more core areas for that event, but also to do missionary actions. I might be able to kill the Counter-Reformation with missionaries. Or maybe not. Maybe I just, work on my own areas to convert them. Now, I'm only able to do it to match my state religion. So what would have been a really clever move if I could get away with it was to play that and fire off some to change things to Protestant so that they don't impact me with the change of religion. But hey, maybe I get lucky. Maybe there's no cards out there that are going to help. Oh well. Keeping their same missions, you can't do shit. But I drew another development and a central authority. Central authority is an extra king, not a bad one either. He's got at least some decent values. Not that I want to replace my revolutionary there, but the nice thing there is there's an increased stability there. Somehow or another, I did not shift these over, but let me check my strength because that probably means I did something wrong. I should be at 7. Which means there's one more army available. That's kind of nice. Because goal-wise, I'm keeping settle in America. But remember, I cleared one of my goals out. So now Church of England. State religion is Protestant or Counter-Reform. Maximum one of your areas does not have the state religion. They all do right now. So essentially I have this. I get 3 cubes in areas with my state religion. That's most of the board. So I can aim for some of my other goals, say trying to influence on the mainland and, get that kind of Hanoverian connection or whatever it's going to be. Or Scotland. I could play around with Scotland. I've got a marriage there. But right now I got to focus on these rebellions that I have. I'm not sure what helps with that. Drawing for generals, well, that gives me a good shot at a ruler, so I'll probably do that. But other than that, man, it's tough. Maybe an admin card. Managed to draw a ruler at all. I threw away one of my military cards. It's just more expensive for a +3. I probably will keep this as an advisor. This one, well, looks like he's an advisor too because I've got the interregnum going on. Unless a king shows up over there on the deck, in which case, maybe I can actually use it. What are we looking at king-wise in this period? Restoration, maybe? So, what does that make? That makes Charles II? I don't know. But it might not be in here. William and Mary. Ooh, that feels like that would be in this same third deck. So I'm guessing that there's only one ruler per country per deck, usually. Usually. There might be enough disruption to be worth it, but I don't know. Anyway, that puts us all the way around. We've done everything. Let me just do a quick reminder because I went over these at the end of the last video. I like to peek at them. Decline of the Habsburgs. This is the War of Spanish Succession issue coming out here. It offers marriages. There's probably going to be something else beyond this, but it's kind of weird because that something else might be here, or not name an heir at all, in which case I don't have to give... so this is tough, because basically I have to either set up the War of Spanish Succession with other royals, or create a mess in my own country. Not good for either side of the Spaniards. They would like this just not to be picked, and it might not be, unless somebody has real interest in their territory. France has real interest in their territory, both in Savoy and in the Low Countries, and also in Lombardy and whatnot. And England has interest in the Low Countries as well, conceivably. So who knows? Decadent government. This is a requirement for every player, right? All players must choose, either reform or local autonomy, which is either going to be paying some admin to create a reform government or lose stability, or, well, reform government clearly looks better. For every full 10 ducats of tax income, you must pay, for every 10, you could lose a stability. This will lose you a stability and cause you revolts, though. So I'm guessing everybody's going to go with reform government one way or another. And then disputed succession, this is on an independent realm, and we've seen this before. It can create a succession war if anybody has a marriage problem, and someone else can get involved in it. All right, we're going to break for a bit. I think my raid play has to be a little bit more active at this point, because I have to pay attention to it. I've been kind of running things on auto all day. I'll point something out that I think I've pointed out before, but you know, this has to do with the memorization of the decks and knowing what's going to happen and whatnot. So certain historical things, like the full integration of Aragon into the Habsburg inheritance and whatnot, didn't happen because there was no card for them to happen particularly. Now, I was making attempts towards it, so I'm not going to completely blame it on I didn't know what cards there were, because honestly, I know what my goals are, and sure, there might be a card that helps me, but there might not. But I made it kind of half-hearted because I thought there would be a card, other than a subjugation, that would allow me to take over the Habsburg territories, or I'm sorry, the Castilian territories, and just absorb them. Now, I ran into problems. By the time that I was sure that there wasn't a card, I was running into a lot of problems, which might have happened anyway. I might have ended up losing that area anyhow. However, it's a lot harder to lose territory that is sort of part of your realm, although you know, that you have wooden counters on, right? Unless there's religious problems. That is a kind of interesting note, though, there, which is that, you know, to some extent, unless you completely memorize the deck that's available for that game. And I mean, to what extent are you supposed to memorize it? Are you supposed to memorize the death markings, the little special events, whatever? The general feel of those special events? Like, is there going to be a lot of, you know, religious spread, whatnot? Or are you supposed to, you know, memorize maybe the key events that affect you and worry about them? And obviously, that's going to be problematic because I'm playing everyone, so I have to know them all. Or, you know, are you supposed, and there's nothing to help you. There's no compendium if that's expected. I think I have the same disagreement. Like Paths of Glory also has this kind of situation. There may be a compendium there though, but where, you know, you can't make the right plays to get historical results. Now, it bothers me more in that because it feels like these results are somewhat more randomized. But the truth of the matter is, if I knew there was no card integrating Spain, I would have worked a little harder to do it. I would have made it a bigger deal, like I did with Poland. Now, I also had that same feeling with Poland, though, right? And it took me as long, and Poland just didn't get into the same kind of trouble that Spain did. So I'd say they're actually really the same situation, where I was looking at it thinking, well, all right, I get half of it. The other half, I'm assuming it'll happen. It doesn't. It doesn't. Whereas if you're walking into it with, like, you know, just a general knowledge of the history of the era as your guidepost, well, then you're left with this kind of, hey, I don't know if that really makes sense, does it? You know, it's like, I've got this guide that I'm using that's, you know, my knowledge of the history of what should happen. Now, I got no problem if it doesn't happen because the cards were randomized, but they weren't. It's not like the card's missing. Whatever cards are meant to represent these historical nations are actually in there and bolted in, and there's no choice in the matter. And it just feels like it feels like I was kind of fooled, right? I was fooled into thinking there would be an event that would cause stuff. And I feel the same way with the decline of the Habsburgs. Is the War of Spanish Succession guaranteed to happen? Sure, it's guaranteed to happen in the sense that this is going to be triggered, but this could be a non-event like the 30 Years' War was, right? If it's up to the players to cause these wars, basically. And that, you know, it's not always in their interests. Getting involved in a war is not a good thing, right? You can end up really screwed. The French tried to do the Savoy thing. They got nowhere with it and ended up really kind of hurting themselves in trying to play in that. And that's fine and everything. I just kind of expected the events to drive things a little bit more. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. In a way, it was always one of my feelings that something was wrong in the old EU, was that, oh, these events are just the historical pre-programmed things. That's all that's happening to you. Damn it, I want this to be more generic the way Empires of the Middle Ages is. Well, this takes sort of a halfway route, because it gives you events that are kind of partway there and maybe set the table. But I don't know, it feels funny to me, and I don't know how else to put it and how to get the words out to express what I'm feeling completely. But I just want to express that sort of, wow, something's kind of uncomfortable here in terms of, like, you know, especially that I'm feeling cheated, right? Because I'm expecting the events to come out and expecting to get a helping hand. And in a lot of cases I have, right? There have been places where there's helping hand type things that direct me towards the stuff, and then other cases where I'd expect the same kind of level, and they don't. And I can't discern the difference between, like, you know, I'm trying to think what did kind of direct me in the right ways, and it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to tell, because it may actually be a relatively analogous situation across all the things. So, for example, these wars, the war for Savoy or whatever, the wars for Italy. You know, they didn't really trigger. I wasn't forced into Milan or anything along those lines. It wasn't that heavily enacted. It's more like, those are your guide, these are your guide, and there are events which may help you set it up a little bit. Like, what got me this vassalization? Nothing really. I got a bunch of cubes, very similar to what got me in here, and then I had to do the vassalization myself. Like, I got a marriage and some cubes, and then I did the vassalization, and then never got the integration. Now, part of why I never got it was I didn't get a subjugate card. If I had gotten one, this would have been subjugated. I think I got a subjugate card for Poland-Lithuania early and didn't play it, in part because I didn't have the cube resources to do it. They were all played out, and I had to basically play out something over here before I had enough cubes to finish that off, and I just had myself spread out too far all over the board, which was the great problem that Poland had early in the game, right? They threw too many of their cubes on the board. Anyway, so things might be right at the right level, and I just didn't discern that level while I was playing. And that's part of why I kind of want to play again, is now that I know kind of what level of, I don't know, randomness there is, I'm a little more comfortable with what things I'd have to do to push my countries forward. And I'm perfectly fine with the fact that I didn't get a subjugate card, therefore it didn't happen. That's exactly the kind of thing I like, right? That I'm reliant on a certain level of randomness to get the historical events to truly happen the way they're supposed to. Although, of course, the War of Spanish Succession, including this, might seem a little weird. But, you know, including this and not all of Spain, right? I also feel very weird. So a similar one is Portugal. I don't feel like the dual monarchy ever really happened. I got some cubes. That's the net effect. So that's a little odd too. Like the marriage happened, but it didn't really take it all. Like it didn't take all that well anyhow, but it didn't take it all there, which feels a little whacked. I have to make stories up, which I like to do. About what sort of happened. I mean, obviously, I married into the Burgundians with Castile. The Alfonso marriage happened. There's no question of that. That got less integrated. But I think one way of looking at it is like the split with the Austrian and Spanish Habsburgs. There was a split where someone got Castile, but not the entirety of the Alfonso inheritance. The islands are all still vassals to Spain. Whatever that means. They're sort of they're a separate country from this, right? I've got a royal marriage there. I've got, you know, most royal marriages stay forever, man. They hardly ever go away. But I've got a royal marriage there, and that might make sense because, you know, something that's set into motion 50 years ago or whatever might not bear fruit for a long time, but it might eventually, with dying off of family members, whatever. But it is kind of interesting that the three islands here have remained in Spanish hands as vassals only. Now, what does a vassal really mean in such a case? I mean, you know, this was obtained by a marriage, this left, but it's the same kind of relationship as I have with Savoy, which was just through an alliance. Like, these kind of vassals feel like client states. This feels more like, because of the marriage that was involved and whatnot, like an inheritance, but one that's just not integrated. And somehow or another, some other branch of the family is in charge in Aragon. And that's why there's a marriage claim still there. However you want to look at that. It's weird, though. It's like, part of me wants the whole story, you know? The whole story the way Blood Royale would tell it. Although Blood Royale kind of gets everything ass backwards in a lot of ways. You know, it's just really, really simplified, trying to handle the marriages the way, you know, a way they never were. Spain is all the more interesting. Remember, I've got my Cromwell in Spain, essentially, right? So that may have kind of corresponded with when Aragon started falling off. It didn't all happen through one event. It wasn't like, you know, there was an inheritance that went away. This happened through the rebellion mechanism rather than anything else, which is why there's a bunch of rabble there. And why didn't that rabble move? You must have had them cut off, but now they're not. You know, so they might move. But But yeah, that's there's something interesting there that goes beyond just the royal family, because, I mean, does it make sense that Cromwell has a royal marriage with anything? What does that represent? You know, maybe there's going to be a restoration of Charles II, and that's where the marriage is? Or, you know, because there's just no way, there is no way that, like, you know, this revolutionary type figure like a Cromwell, and this could be happening in England just to make things completely, you know, the marriages would still stay. This did not get rid of marriages, which is all very interesting and feels weird. So it's hard to tell just what that story is. Illustrious turn, they're tempted by this event here, the disputed succession. Pick an independent realm with one or more marriages on it and flip them over. And then I could take a free declare war targeting only that realm. I think this allows me to declare war even though I have an interregnum. Gain a couple military if it's adjacent to your realm. Now, there are some that are very, I mean, I could just do this against Lorraine and grab that. And that would be fine. I could do it against, one of the reasons I'm tempted to do this is I have so many marriages. So I could do it there, I could do it against Cologne and grab that. I could conceivably do it against somebody else's marriages, but I'm looking around and I don't see any that are near me that I can really access. So this is all alliances here. Alliances. There really aren't a lot of marriages out there that aren't mine. Now, where I'd most want to do it against is Venice, but I have an alliance with them, which I believe would violate, would force me to violate the alliance. So that's kind of unappealing. I also have other things I want to do because I don't have a lot of cash, etc. But I kind of want to get that card out of the way because otherwise somebody could pick off one of my marriages. Oh, this is an alliance, not a marriage. So my three marriages are in Venice, Hungary, which is a vassal, I'm not going to hit them, and Cologne. Cologne is set up kind of nicely. I think I'm going to fire off that event mainly to prevent someone else from taking, from forcing a war on me or forcing a war with one of my marriages. So we grab this, and I pick an independent realm with one or more marriages. Great. Cologne is going to flip over. Cologne is going to flip over like that. Now it's pretty easy for me to take. I'm not really doing it because I want to take it. I'm doing it because I don't want somebody else screwing my life up. So I get a free declare war action targeting only that realm. Since it's disputed, there's no penalty. I gain 2 if it's adjacent to my realm. It is. Creating kind of a weird little block here. But yeah, I get 2 military cubes. Cubes are good. And now we trigger the rest of the event. One is an attrition action, an attrition thing. And I'm the only one at war. Just happened, man. Hey, no. Okay. I believe I get to complete my declaration of war action before that happens. So I can march into here and fight my battle first. Now that's only got 1 strength point. My army has 4. And I get 2 extra dice. That's going to be a success. I do not have an advantage, so they get 3 dice against me and manage to hit one of my armies. But now I'm established there and, can siege it next round. Now the attrition event takes place. I don't remember. Here they are. Yeah. I think I just lose a unit, but I'm not sure. I'm trying to find it. All PRs that are war except you must remove 1 land unit as a casualty for every 4 deployed land units. Okay, so nothing there. Now I get to control growth in blue and orange. Blue? Blue. The only blue. 2 different orange choices. Okay. All right. So those are Turkish home areas. You take that. That doesn't really help me. That's not Turkish home, but I would just be taking the claim away. So that doesn't really do me much good. I guess I'll grab mush. That makes me harder to attack. And put this back in Tabriz, which is the capital. Move. Oh, can't do that. Put it here. Put this here. We're just overburdened. The other one, I mean, I could screw with the Turks. That's not a bad choice, probably. On the other hand, I could screw with other people by playing. I definitely don't want the Netherlands expanding in Europe, but expanding, out there would be useful. Cyprus. We'll grab a claim to Cyprus. There we go. I mean, why not? Okay. And then finally, some plus signs. Hold off Murad. I am going to hold off. I have a ruler that I could just slap in there to get rid of the interregnum. That's a free action, I believe. Thought it was. Appointed advisor leader, yeah. I find that there might be times when it's bad. There he is. When it's bad to have a no leader. Like if, I don't know, if an event came up that said you may declare war or something like that, that could be a penalty. But I can play this at almost any time, during my turn. Cromwell and a number of advisors got hearts there. And now put some cash out, and our new event is Protestants expelled. Okay, this comes with Louis XIV, which has to be an advantage over Louis XIII there, making him die early. But expel the traitors. France may change the religion of one of their areas to match their state religion, and they gain 2 prestige by adding unrest to 1 in the area and exhausting 2 military. If they have the tolerance idea, they lose it, and the player gains a military. That would be something France would like to do very much. If somebody wanted to screw with France, which is unlikely, they're so far behind. And this is important because if I want to change to Protestant, I want to change Catholic areas over to Protestant. And this doesn't say it's to the state religion. So I could change to Protestant and then expel Catholics. Have mercy, France loses 1 stability and 2 prestige, which is not good. And the player who plays this gains a diplomacy. I think France feels safe that nobody's going to play that, and that they can go through their planned changing religion and then becoming more strict, and also get that other ruler. Events might be firing off pretty quickly if people are seeing things they really need to do, though. It's going to play this commercial growth. They've been waiting for it for a long ass time. Do they need to do it right away? I don't know. It's hard to tell, but I could get myself in trouble if I don't. I'd expand a trade notion or develop a small town into a large one. Why don't we make it Warsaw? Just because, and we had to pay the whole cost. We didn't have a development card in play. We don't have one available. And that allows me to declare that I've reincorporated Masovia. I get a point there. Kind of jerked because, okay. And I draw an administrative or diplomatic card or gain a claim. So I don't need those claims, which means I'm going to look. An administrative card would be less useful, I think, than a diplomatic card. So I think I'll draw a diplomat card. Now this is, let's find Poland. We've done all our A's at this point, and I'll grab the second last of these. It's a royal marriage, but more importantly, it's a good advisor that I can bank. Well, I have room for marriages, so that's not terrible. Downside that I didn't think of while I was doing it, too bad. I've mentioned before, when Austria did this and got itself at war here, oops, I'm not in the right area. I went in here and fought here. Okay. When Austria did this and took that over, or marched in and attacked, by declaring war, they're at war for the rest of this round. There's no way around it. They conquer that, they can't go to peace immediately. I kind of don't like that. I feel like if you win a total war that quickly, you should be able to then play like your diplomacy cards that maybe you really wanted to play. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, in some ways, I can't really do it like I have a royal marriage card. I need to play another royal marriage. Now, yeah, I could have moved things around or something like that, but it's just, you know, the opportunity feels like it was necessary to take. Now, I should have been thinking that when I'm drawing my cards and everything, and I didn't. But again, shit happens, right? This constant tension between, like, in terms of timing your wars, if you hold off and do a lot of other things before you do your wars, and obviously this is not the time where that's an issue, but if this was a matter of someone else could use that card, or worse, use that card and screw with me. But if you time your wars and hold off too late, you don't really get as much as you want out of the war. This wouldn't have been that kind of case at all. This is just a one cube fight, basically, right? Oh, I won the battle. I get another military cube. I forgot about that. Wow, 3, 6, 7, 8. Neat. 10-point limited. Never get close to it recently. I think I may have at one point. I certainly was complaining about the possibility of being able to hoard your cubes and it causing problems. But outside of that, if you do it too early, you can't do things, right? You shut off certain opportunities that you may otherwise have, like using your diplomatic cubes for stuff. Of course, those cubes can get rearranged. Well, one of them can. And there's things like trade I can do, but yeah. Found some stupid realms there. The new alliance card. If I played that, I could take a cube away, put 2 cubes down, and get this as an ally, which would be tremendously helpful in attacking Egypt. But I don't have that kind of cube power. Study technology, I don't want to do that. So now the question is there anything I want to do before I launch my war? And my stability sucks. So that might be the something I want to do first. Is it a big deal? I don't know. Well, I want to have a leader before I launch my war, that's for sure. All right, well. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to go to war with Egypt. I don't necessarily want to do that first. I want to see whether other things play out. Decadent government, not fun at all for me. I probably don't want to pick that. Well, I don't want anybody to pick that. I could fuck with France, don't care. I could fuck with Spain in the Habsburg card, don't really care. My only enemy right now is Austria. If I had set myself up to go to war with Austria, this might be an appealing time, but I chose differently. I could, of course, still go for Austria. I'm going to just up my stability and delay making a decision of what I'm doing, because it might make more sense for me to go to war with Austria, even though I've set myself up for this big war with the Mamluks. And France is going to do the nasty. Right now, I got two subjugates. The things I want to subjugate, well, here I don't have the cubes in the right places. I'm not sure I can do it while they're in unrest. I guess so. And then I don't have my cubes in the right places for that subjugation. That is counter-reform Catholic right now. I would like to change that. How do I change that? Can't think of an easy way. That's problematic, actually. And, boy. Seizing it isn't going to help. I have a development card. Development card will help. That gives me missionaries, which come too late because it's state religion. Ugh. Nothing quite works out. I think I just have to do the nastiness here. Change state religion. I'm going to become Protestant. I will lose 2 prestige and 1 stability. That's not too bad. So far. I remove a marriage and 5 cubes from Catholic areas. All right. I don't have cubes anywhere except here, which is Protestant. That's all I see. Okay. So that's fine. Do I have any marriages? I don't know. The easiest way would be to look here. There's 2, 3 in there. One of these is the special one, I'm sure. That's the special one. There seems to be an alliance missing. Do I have an alliance on the board? It's really hard to see right now. I don't think I do. This must be the special alliance. No. There's 3 alliances. 4 marriages. There has to be an alliance on the board. What am I allied to? Well, gosh. Okay. I have the wrong alliance up here. They are Protestant, so that's not going to be a problem either. Okay, good enough. So anyway, that wasn't really an issue. Place remove cubes into areas with the same gain an unrest into each of the areas of the religion you abandoned. Okay, first of all, I get a little Protestant marker as I join the English in the fun party that I just created. Alternatively, if there's a Alternatively, if there's at least one counter-reform token on the board, e.g. following the Council of Trent, Catholic players can pay to embrace counter-reformation, put a counter-reformed in their capital without suffering any of the consequences listed above. Ooh! Well, that's of interest to people who want to stay Catholic. France doesn't want to. But Spain and Austria both have goals towards that I should have been considering. Okay, we'll have to think about that. I did not realize this little rule there. So now I get an unrest in each area that's Catholic of mine. That's this, and that's this. Okay, I made my problem worse for now. For now. But I think for the most part, this is exactly what I wanted to do. Now that is a generic action, not a minor action, which means it does take my turn. I'm surprised it doesn't create a casus belli or anything. Casus bellum? Oh, I get to roll rebel dice in those two areas. And this is kind of painful because this area has 3, but I have my army in there. That'll help. Simple result, I lost $2 and a cube. The cube I wish I didn't lose. I'd rather fatigue a unit or, I'll lose more money. Money is irrelevant for France right now. They got plenty and aren't planning on going to war. Well, now we have to think about Spain and the possibility of going counter-reform. The problem is, this is just such a mess. This is what I'd be aiming for. Defend the Catholic faith. It's worth a fortune. 6 victory points. Can I take it? I can't take it right now, obviously. But it needs 2D and 3A to be complete. Or 2D or 3A. 2D is Italian ambitions. I don't have that. 3A is Iberian Union. So I can't even take this if it were to show up. If it were to show up, the state religion becomes counter-reformed. I'd have to own 4 or more, or is counter-reformed to get it. I'd have to own 4 or more provinces in the Netherlands, Flanders, and Wallonia. Or Burgundy. I'm close. All of your areas and 3 or more HRE areas have to be Catholic. That would give me a stability and a cardinal as well. It's an interesting thing. Obviously, it's no big deal that I didn't take it because it's not going to help me. I also don't really know that I want to do it. Is there any penalty to being counter-reform? That's a good question. And who knows? This is like the Cromwell guy. He's changing his mind. Whatever he did before he didn't like. He was still Catholic for the state because the Protestants are revolting against him, but he was trying to aim for something, who knows what. And now, I sure the hell don't want to become Protestant. Do I? There's no harm in terms of stability. What else do I lose? So as a realm to change its state religion, I'd lose two victory points off of it. And there's a lot of victory points for going counter-reform. If I go counter-reform, I can start spreading counter-reform using cubes. And that sounds sweet as hell to me. So, well, we're running out of Protestant markers now. the Protestant counter-reform. We're going to declare ourselves counter-reform because there is no cost to that. If there's at least one counter-reform on the token, oh, I got to pay 3 admin. Ooh. Oh, boy. That's the shit I need to play with these, but I think I want to do this. We're going to try to turn back the Protestant tide, even while France goes Protestant here. By the way, if France had any cubes over there, they would lose it. Okay, so Spain is now counter-reform. We're going to start seeing Catholic markers disappearing because what's going to happen is we're going to be converting things using those missionaries to counter-reform. I'm going to probably need to pull out and use different counters to handle things because the counter mix is just not going to handle this. It is going to cash in their Church of England. State religion is Protestant or counter-reform. Maximum one of your areas does not have the state religion. All of my areas have the state religion. I'm good with that. So I get 3 prestige and 3 cubes in any areas with my state religion. Well, I'm going to put 2 of those cubes here, up in Scotland. That's going to help me incorporate Scotland. And I got 2 more cubes. I got to check my goals for what I want elsewhere. Unfortunately, I think Saxony, well, Saxony down there is one of them, but I've got a bunch of cubes here. I'm good there. I need to play elsewhere, though. So the only places are Lower Saxony, which is where I am, Netherlands. Do I want to try to wipe the Dutch off the map? Well, they're not out of this world, and Flanders and Wallonia, where I could get myself into some problems with the Dutch, or with the Spaniards. Both of those are Protestant. I'm going to guess, I mean, I could even actually take over the Netherlands. It's not that wealthy. I don't know if you're allowed to do that to dynamic NPRs. Here's what's kind of fucked up. First of all, DNPRs are an optional role or an advanced role. Or, I don't know, I think they're marked as an advanced role in the scenario setup. All provinces own. When a DNPR's province is annexed or vassalized by a PR, and remember, this happened to Naples, and we handled it and it just wiped them out because they were completely destroyed. Keep the underneath the player's in case it gets liberated. I think if you completely wipe it out, I'm going to follow the rules that I did with Naples. Yes, I'm making shit up. But like if I completely vassalize it, I think it stays a DNPR. It stays a DNPR claim. At least that's how I'm going to put it. It's not like these wouldn't turn into little countries again if I wipe them out. But I think if the DNPR is completely wiped out, it should just be gone. Otherwise, you'd have the Mamluks always being kind of a threat down there. That just doesn't feel right, Do I want the cubes here, or do I want them in Flanders is the question. I have claims to both. What could I do in Flanders with the cubes? Not much, so I'm going to put them here. We're getting some spillover there. This is not an action here. We already grabbed the points for it, and I'm going to put this away. Visit the same problem here, because I still think I'm doing it wrong. Because here's the thing. If I build my troops there, and these don't fight me immediately, I can siege this. I can take it. I cannot resolve the problem, though. That's the one thing. But what I'm looking at here is the wording under a number of places, unfortunately. So declare war works a certain way, which is different. Let's look at activate units. Activate units when land moving, if entering a hostile or neutral area. When units enter an area containing hostile units. Those are hostile units. Let's look at build. Recruit units. If you recruit units in areas containing enemy units or hostile NPR provinces, it causes a battle. That's a different situation. Those are two different things. The only place where hostile is related is NPR provinces. That is not the case here. So I can siege London, but I can't quell the unrest, which means the rebellion will continue, so I have to do that stupid dance. That's how I interpret that. I don't know if that's right, but it's very disturbing. Anyway, I do want to launch an attack, so let me figure out how to do that, because I need to get rid of the problem. Now, Ireland is much easier. The same annoying position I was in last time, which is that I need to do trade first so that I don't go into debt building my army. Fire this one off. I have a total point value of 1, 2, 3 there, which gets me up to the 3 to 5 level. Now Spain has the exact same point value, but as the person who plays the card, I get to break ties. I have the greater value. It drops down to the 1 to 2 level though, because there's a pirate ship there, which means only I collect, and I get $4 for it, which is not great, but I'm still going to have to take out a loan. A ship wouldn't help me. Like, I could get another ship into there, 1, 2, right? But I'd still be on the same chart and get the same drop. I just wouldn't have to break ties in that case. That's going to put me back around to here. I'm going to call it. I don't know if that's it for the night, because I'm still kind of awake feeling. It's like 3 in the morning or so. Been awake for, only like 11 hours. So it's not that bad. But yeah, this is just my way of life. But it's like, it feels like I should go to sleep or something soon. And I do have more stuff to do in Raid. I just had to leave the game because it was acting funny. One of those little thoughts. I've never played Europa Universalis this way, but I have played Empires in Arms, which is not too different in a way where you wrote down where everything was. There's more complexity in the original EU. It would be harder to do that. But if you had to if you could play an age and then write down the starting locations and pack it in, I think it would be possible in the original EU. I think it would actually be easier in this. Although, obviously, look, it's going to be a pain in the ass. You got to write down all the different provinces and everything. But because it's not hex numbers, I think, taking an hour or so to clean up and set up again wouldn't be that terrible. And honestly, the setup for this is significantly easier than the setup for the old EU, because that had, well, maybe it's because I keep my counters in baggies. If you kept everything in the trays, pre-sorted and everything, that would make it a lot easier. But that I generally take, when I count that out as to how long is it going to take me to set up, a campaign of it, it's pretty much a day or two, Whereas this, with everybody working together to handle their own stuff and everything, you probably could do it in about an hour in each direction. An hour to clean up, an hour to set up again. Now, doing an age though, I think is probably I'm guessing about 12 hours. just in terms of like, with a bunch of people who don't necessarily really know what's going on. Maybe that could get down to 8 or even 6 hours or something with people who really are gung-ho on the game, know it backwards and forwards and everything. So, it's not like it has to be that long a running game, but I get the feeling that any group that I would bring this to, it would take a good 12 hours to play through. I had that kind of discussion with somebody on BGG actually, where I'm saying it takes about 12 hours to play a game of Stellar Conquest, and he's like, "That's crazy," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, every time I've played it in person, and that's like maybe 3 times, with opponents, it takes that kind of length of time, maybe 4 or 5 times. One of the times, I don't think I've ever completed it with a group of people. Now, at least one of the times was with most of the people actually knew the game. Yeah, I think, and the guy who didn't know it all that well, nobody knows it all that well, right? It's one of the problems with having a huge quantity of games, even with Euros and whatnot. Generally, at least someone needs a refresher. It's really unlikely that you have a bunch of people who are just sit down and ready to play. Now, I can say one exception with that was Empires in Arms. I've played that in groups where everybody knew the rules and was ready to go straight off. But most games that I've played in opposed circumstances, at least somebody is not comfortable and familiar with the rules. And like I said, one of the times, everybody had played the game and knew it. We had to skim through the rules and explain a few things and clarify a few things. But yeah, we did not finish the game. Now, and I'm guessing it probably was on a pace to be like a 12-hour game. As opposed to Pax Britannica, which somehow or another has ended, on a much shorter basis. So, if people are saying Stellar can probably be played in 6 hours, I don't know. I just don't know. I think it's a long game. Back up 4 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon, and like about an hour before it's raid time again. Just woke up and on Tuesday, I guess. Hey, it's my birthday coming up. I don't know. I always request Veteran of the Psychic Wars on the Friday closest to my birthday, so. And they play it for me, which is not usually the case with my requests. But I tell them that it's my birthday. Okay, so what I'm looking at, these missions or milestones, they're really kind of generic things. And I didn't really realize that. I thought they had more of a feel kind of like these power plays or whatever. These are really pretty generic, and they don't really drive the meaning of the game too much, usually. But I'm thinking they will drive the narrative here. And that's because what I'm seeing... Okay. This one, hey, these are hard to get. You got to kind of go out of your way for them. And only France is really working towards them with a couple of them in play. I'm really confused why Spain doesn't have one in Granada. I think they may have chosen something wrong early on in an event, like the event that they took Granada on or whatever didn't work out as well, or maybe the goal, they didn't play it as well as they could have. I'm actually kind of curious now. Did they just like fuck up their goal and not take that? Because La Conquista, gain a claim or place a Catholic token? No. Yeah, I guess maybe they had a, when I played it the first time, they had a development card or something like that that they could throw in a little one-turn scenario or whatever that I played. But for the others, I'm noticing two that kind of work together. This one, yeah, we just went for it. It didn't really, it helped drive exploration maybe. But Peacemaker, make peace with 3 or more different realms, including at least one opponent. Well, that would be appealing to someone who has lots of allies. If they're going to bring the allies in as actives, or if you attack one of their allies and expect them to come in, you got a good chance of having 3 or more opponents, as long as you're going after someone major. But then the balance of power even more so. Enforce a peace on an opponent who has more prestige than you on the prestige track. Well, we got 2 people kind of racing at it who actually do have a real interest in fighting a war together. So the hard part here is, for Turkey, they're interested in this, especially if Austria is running ahead. For Austria, though, they're big, and I don't know if they're set up for it. I think they decided they aren't. They were going for the Mamluks, but now I'm beginning to change my mind for various reasons. But for Austria, they have an interest in the balance of power card, but here's the thing, and one of them is in Turkish hands, but they're more interested in trying to fight for the not balance of power. They're more interested in trying to fight for the power struggle there, and you know, there's a lot of stuff on this side of the board that they can kind of play in. So I don't know. But I haven't let these 2 really kind of drive my focus, where they could be a lot of points over there, maybe more than the power struggle is, just by leveraging that. Especially if Austria is getting ahead. But I don't have a lot of time. I'm already in the second half, and Turkey's already was kind of planning on going into the Mamluks. I haven't made my decision final yet. Yeah, like if Austria ends up screwing themselves over with their big debt or whatever, ending up in a position that Turkey changes their mind, this could end up in a big war between Turkey and Austria again. A lot of trouble deciding what to do with the Austrians. And I think that the answer is I want to go counter-reform. That's something I know I want to do. I'm having a lot of trouble discerning what I want to do with them as a player. Looking at this, you know, I can take a royal, I can take a crown on and start a war. I can do a lot of things. But I've got a man of the church, so I could turn an area counter-reform and start working to chip away in various directions. There's a big goal for me to be counter-reform and to convert the empire. And if I succeed in that, if I succeed in getting the empire mostly Catholic, while I'm counter-reform, I get additional bonuses, either imperial power or or I can turn the empire itself to a counter-reform empire. The only problem with that is I don't have enough counters. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll make something up. Forgot I got myself in a war. Let's do that first. Okay, so I throw a cube to siege Cologne. And yeah, we're acting very slowly right now. Like I said, I just woke up. We get one of these occupied markers. I'm just showing you all the steps, I guess. That goes in on rest on top. That's this. And yeah, it's getting really crowded. This game is getting at least as crowded as the old board game did in a lot of ways. In the old board game, you didn't have a lot of armies on the map or stuff, so most of the map was pretty much clean. The only thing you had on most of the neutral areas of the map, and you didn't have things like Austria having possessions here. That it wasn't at that level of detail. Like, it's kind of weird. The province detail in this game is a little bit more fine-grained than the area detail in EU is, in the old EU. But the area detail in this is huge, and So you don't have a patchwork of little tiny areas you can kind of pass through if you've got any interest in the general region, right? But anyway, I land my attack there because, yeah. But now I'm kind of regretting this war that I couldn't have declared normally anyway. So, but I think it was the best move. I don't know. The Poles are also very intrigued by Counter-Reformation, or Counter-Reform, because out of everybody, see, here's the thing. Out of everybody, we're probably the most committed to Catholicism. Like, other people are under siege with Protestantism. We're not. We don't see Protestantism as being a good thing at all, where it's nipping at our borders. There's no way we want it. You know, there's too much of our area is Catholic, and it's going to be this slow progression of doom. If we're counter-reform, and wow, the church is beginning to look stronger again as players start switching over to counter-reform. Of course, the French went to Protestantism. But if we're counter-reform, we can start taking away some of those problems. Those problems are real for Austria, though. Like, those things that are along the edge of us, they're all heading this way. So they're kind of safe, and we can pick them off and just make them Catholic and leave Austria, France, maybe Spain, but we don't have much influence on that. But leave Austria and France to face the Protestant storm, which really isn't likely to come our way. But then, you know, we built this up. That's awfully close to our Protestant area. Maybe that was an error, right? Maybe we should have made something down here our big city. Whoops. Now we're seeing the problem. I did that because, hey, Masovia, let's make Warsaw big. Well, that was probably a mistake in terms of things. So I'm actually considering counter-reform as well, so that I can defend my borders. And that'll create, you know, an additional little lump. Now, I can't create it, except that I have a man of the church here, which will allow me to. Along those lines, though, and yeah, I'm putting a lot more thought in, which is actually kind of a good thing, because some of the times I do things like this without thinking too hard, and they get me in trouble. Yeah, great. Let's say I make something counter-reform that's on my borders using that man of the church. I can't actually use it here, or here, or here for that matter. But I could throw it into Bohemia. Problem with that is Bohemia is kind of a rich area, which means if there's a rich area next to it, that would be an issue. But the thing I was really worried about is if I had chosen one of these on the Baltic, that would be the only outlet for the Scandinavian Protestantism to advance in. Whereas this main northern cap of Protestantism is something different. This gets you to, and I'm trying to remember, I think, let's see if it's here. I mean, it's here somewhere. I think that 1714, the case of the Catalans, had this kind of weird sort of, these same sort of amorphous little objects growing in it. And that may have been one of my objections to how it kind of played out in terms of being realistic or not. And here, I don't know if it's bothering me, it feels like a neat little game mechanism. But here it has to do with religious spread, which feels a little different, you know? The idea of putting a bulwark up or whatever against something seems actually kind of viable. We're going to have a real problem with countermix, though, if the Protestant and counter-reform counters run out. I've got to figure out something that I can use for them. I may end up using tiddlywinks. I have blue and red. Those might work. I came up with my decision for the turn. I don't think this was my initial plan. But everything seems to be in good shape. Is there anything disrupting me right now? Not particularly. France only. Decadent government. It's kind of a bad choice. Here's the problem with the French and the Habsburgs, who are worried somebody will pick their event. And yeah, I'm just really scatterbrained. It's that there's nothing good up there. If somebody needs to pick an event, their choices are hurt either France or Spain, or do something that's just kind of bad across the board. Now, if you're England, this is not unappealing because you have the lowest tax base out of everyone. If we take a look at other players, England gets hit twice at 14. If they were much lower, it would be much, much better. Austria's only 16. Poland's 18. Everybody's getting hit about the same. Turkey, on the other hand, wow, do they get hit hard. They're at 20, 40. So they'll be getting hit with 4 instead of 2. 27 is 3 for France. And I think this counts in, so that's 24 for Spain, which is also 3 hits. So, you know, half the board is kind of okay with that. So it's kind of a, hey, which one do you want to do? Do you want to just hurt Spain or France? Or do you want to hurt everyone, but hurt like half the people more than the other half? And that's a weird little call. And we're not going to move forward into these next 3 events until someone picks one of these. So at least one of these bad guys has to be taken by someone. Now, right now, nobody feels under pressure to grab an event, and I think the French want to grab theirs. They want control of that event. But I didn't really think about, oh no, it's Spain, not the Austrian Habsburgs. You know, I think Habsburgs, I think Austria, even though both countries are ruled by the Habsburgs, because in the old EU, this was not called Austria. It was called the Habsburgs. The reason being, yes, Austria was sort of maybe their biggest old hereditary territory, oldest important hereditary territory. They had others, like, I mean, they started in the Swiss Alps, to tell you the truth, and held that, you know, but for quite some time. But Austria was sort of their power base initially. But, you know, I mean, Bohemia was richer than Austria. Hungary was much, much larger. So it wasn't a nation, right? It was a collection of dynastic inheritances. Anyway, I'm really having trouble. Where was I going? I think what I was going with was, I think my goal is to attack here, but I got to look at my diplomatic actions, make sure there isn't something I want to do. I have a counter-espionage, which is cheap to play. Nobody's going to espionage me, though. I'm not in the league, right? Unless they have something they really want. I've got my spy network where I could just, I mean, that's the one way it could happen, is France is picking off with their spy network, the same way I might. I've got a royal marriage. I don't have to be a piece to do a royal marriage, so I can hold this. I've got some cubes for diplomacy. I don't really need money, so trade is kind of not that exciting. I could forge an alliance, fabricate claims. These are sort of my important choices. Now I've got a claim here. This is where I'm thinking of attacking. This is already my vassal. I'll accept that, and I can let that live. This I've got alliances with all over the place. Don't really want to deal with attacking them. Everywhere else, I'm kind of facing Austria or the Empire. I could march into Denmark, but I don't have any real goal for that. A marriage with Denmark, how big a deal is that? Well, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're big enough that an alliance will be dissolved with them. Do I want a marriage with Denmark? It's an interesting concept. There's no question of that. Likewise, I could have a marriage with Sweden, which, if I'm setting things up for cards that I don't know what they're going to be, maybe I need to do that, right? There was a royal marriage between Poland and Sweden, and there might be some reasons for me to try to create a Polish-Swedish kingdom out of all of this. That's kind of tempting. On the other hand, so is the big +3 modifier, which is, I think, what I want with that. Oh, I wasn't necessarily, I have all my, no, I have all my alliances down. I don't have my marriages down. Yeah, an alliance with Sweden would be really powerful because they have a big army that I could bring into play. And remember, alliances are valuable. I just don't know what to do. Like, I want to go to this war, right? Oh, I know why I don't call allies in. Because it costs me cubes. It costs me like... So if you remember, I said, well, alliances don't do much. And then we found, yeah, actually they kind of do. But the problem is the call to arms on an ally, page 13 gets us there maybe. It's 2 cubes for each alliance when it's an offensive alliance. So for defensive alliances, you can call them for free. But offensive alliances, I have to throw 2 diplomatic cubes per country. That's not really worth grabbing myself, 3 armies here. What is this? Wow, okay. So this is 1 country. Okay, cool. So that would be worth 2 armies. But it's not really worth me calling my allies in. I can handle this on my own with the force I have. Therefore, do I have cannons that I can buy? That would be 5 military. That's not easy. And I don't have anything that helps me get them. So it's cheaper for me to do 4 sieges. That's going to be 4 cubes worth of siege. I could have that if I could buy the cannons, but then I kind of don't have the force to do the military. I have 3 towns right now. Yeah, I need to own 2 ports, which means I have to actually conquer these. I'm really sorry. It's like I'm having to grasp everything over again for some reason today. But these are things that I just put on the back of my mind and wasn't really thinking too hard about. Well, my diplomacy is not that great. I do have a big diplomat card, though. That could fill up pretty quickly. I'm probably going to have to do a reorg, though. Steal one of those cubes. Can I drop cubes when I'm not at peace? Forge alliances, it has to be at peace. I don't want to do that. Fabricate claims has to be at peace. I might want to do that, but I don't know. I'm not really that excited about, if that's what I need for Sweden, I just don't understand it. Trade does not. I think we go to war. I think we declare war on, and we're not going to hit, I guess that's Estonia there, Riga. we're just going to attack Livonia because that gives us the things we need to, that gets us 2 ports. And hold on, there's another thing we need that we haven't revealed. How about the other Poles, the ones who aren't Turkish? Dominate the Baltic, is own or vassalize 4 more provinces. Ooh, that does not include, shit, that does not include Prussia. I thought I could count Prussia in there. I may have to declare war on both. If I declare war on both, I need a bigger force, but I've got a pretty big force. But the biggie is that I need 4 more cubes, but I can get 1 from the attack, and I can get 1 from that. So I think I can do this. Again, I'm counting cubes rather than looking at, hey, what's the military situation? Do I need to build an army? I have an army. Do I need to build one? I have an army. I have a general for that army who gives me 2 cav dice, which is why I have a cav unit in it. I'm facing 4, so I may be facing a general, but I'm just going to go ahead and launch my attack in there. And I'm declaring war on both of them. That doesn't cost me any more. So I'm also attacking Riga. These aren't islands, so I don't need to blockade them. And I move in 1, 2 through my allied territory. And now what? Now I guess we draw a general. They don't get one. That's good for me. Get a couple of these. And yeah, we're eating up time, valuable video time, rather than me, because I'm puzzling aloud, right? Okay, so I get my 3 dice. Everything feels new to me somehow. Plus 2 dice for my king. I have a backup ruler in case I need them. And there are 4 pieces here. I hit 1, 2, 3 times. So I'm going to pull a soldier out just to remind me. And for them, they get their full 3 dice. Yeah, this could have been problematic. Could still. And they get 3 hits on me, which is, yeah, kind of painful. But they're down to 1 soldier. Now they have nowhere to retreat, so they'll keep fighting. One problem for me is I only can siege 2 cities per turn, but it still takes me cubes. But yeah, I could be in trouble. I may need to take my cav as a hit if I get hit, which is quite likely. I wipe them out. Why does Poland have no army? Like no army tech. And they hit 1 of mine. Now I have to make a hard call. Sieges, because cav don't count as full strength in siege. They count as a half point in siege. And I still have to pay a cube per cav. If I have just 1 unit, it's going to take me 4 actions to siege this. So I'm going to take my hit on my cav. And I wipe them out. I get a victory though, and that's absolutely vital, because that gives me a cube back, and now I have enough to siege it. And I'm in position here, and over 2 turns I can take it. And oh boy, why am I thinking entirely on camera? If only I had more cubes for the Turks. I feel like I could launch a very effective war against Austria. But just because of their money situation. But Austria has a lot of allies. They'd get some free troops in play. They have a lot of cubes. They don't really need the money. They can call all those allies into play, right? I mean, they have allies all over the place. They have an alliance here that is adjacent to their realm. It doesn't have to make its way back to the capital. They have an alliance here, so now they're up to 4 extra units. And where's their other alliance? Their other alliance is not there. It's down here in Venice. That's big. So yeah, they could field a pretty large army. They could threaten Naples, or they could just put it here and fight whatever I'm putting up against them. So I don't feel like, even though they're low on money, that I can really challenge Austria. So onward for the Mamluks. This I have to get rid of the interregnum, and I do that with this ruler. Unfortunately, this is something that could have gotten me an advisor over there. I've got an advisor for there, though. This logistics, which could be very useful. This is the army over here. I can let that sit there. So I think I build up my other army. Something that was brought up is that I can build, Kalasmar again pointed this out, but this is not like this is not a rule that either of us missed. He clarified with me, he's been playing along as well, and you know, the things that he's bringing up that I missed are things that he missed as well while playing. So we're in a very similar kind of situation where we may find stuff, puzzle stuff out, whatever, and he's better at catching these kind of rules than I am. I don't know if he's doing a video on it. He does a lot of videos, and some of them are very good. I haven't watched very many. You know, I'm not big on watching videos, but they're a similar kind of style of the playthroughs and whatnot. So, what do we got here? We have an army here that I probably want to grow. So what he brought up was, I can build armies here and here that will immediately fight. And then when I do a siege action, let's see what that does. I think siege is per area, but I'm not positive. So let's take a look. Yeah, so a land activation for siege, if the selected area. So siege has to be done one area at a time, but I can build troops in multiple areas all at once. This saves me from the countdown on the clock, the event timer. There were no events that I absolutely felt like I need to take. I do need to swap batteries, but my build troops, I could reinforce this force, which I probably want to do to be able to get in here. And I could drop troops into these, fight these, and be in a position to siege them, because the NPR is gone from the area. How many cubes do I have, though? This is my big problem. So, there's nothing big down here. There is one. All right. So, even to just siege Egypt, I need more troops. I'm not going to be able to probably take the entirety of the Mamluks out, which may mean that I don't necessarily want to pick these guys off. It may be more important. So what I'm going to have is a declare war. I get a cube back. I'm at even, assuming I win a battle, right? I only have to win one. Then I have 1, 2, 3 cubes for the siege. I could do 2 more sieges with these 2 cubes. So if I build troops here and here, I can take those locations. I have a lot of money, I have a lot of troops. I think I'm gonna. Building my maximum of troops without getting mercenaries. Let me explain how I'm doing it. Well, not my maximum. Actually, I could build 2 more. Hold on. Let's build these. It's 4, 8 more. Okay. This is kind of complicated how I'm building, because things are kind of mixed around here. All right. First, these guys, I can build those 2 from any of this. These 2 are being built from this. Here, I'm building a cav, and 1, 2, 3, up to 5 infantry. And I think I did that, okay? So now I've got a huge force here. I've got 2 armies here and here. I spent my cube. I've got 2 fights on my hand. Both of them are going to be a single unit. I got to swap batteries. I was supposed to do it before and I forgot. I could commit my king to an army in one of these 2. I'm not going to do that. I think I want my king to be with the other army. I don't know. And I don't want to risk his death in several battles. So, as the Turks, I have some advantages here. I force less dice on them, and I get the Janissaries. So let's fight this battle first. Okay, kill him. And he kills one of mine. That was this one? I don't know. I don't remember which one I chose. I think I'm pretty much guaranteed to win both of them. I get my cube back. I roll again on the other one. I succeed. And that means I win the battle, right? And he kills one of mine. Okay. I do not get an extra cube for that. The boat goes on. I'm kind of fatigued already. Been live on camera for too much time. But yeah, what I'm counting on doing is being able to now take 3, 4, 5 areas. 1, 2, I don't know. 3, 4, 5. I capture everything. Conquering this is actually not that important because I can't take Egypt with the cubes I have. Like, when it comes to a peace condition, I can't take Egypt. I could vassalize them. I think that would keep them as a dynamic NPR, though, under the way that there's this fucking weirdness to the whole thing, right? Like, the dynamic NPRs are sort of this special rule, and I don't think they're covered. Oh, a marriage is required to vassalize an NPR that has its own vassals. I think that's always been the case where I've done it, but I didn't realize that. That could impact some things, but I have like a marriage with Venice. Remember, it reduces the cost limitation on NPRs. But the DNPRs, there's not a lot about DNPRs here. A province owned by the same DNPR is marked by these with matching colors. When their province is annexed or vassalized, it keeps that DNPR marker. Read strictly, the DNPR is there for the game. Naples would still be there. The one place where I took it, the one thing that I did, which is if you completely conquer a DNPR, it would make sense that it can't come back, right? But if you vassalize it, it's still a valid country. But should it be able to expand and whatnot? Yeah, maybe not. Against you? Wow, now you're starting to get into some weird issues here. Right? And that's where I don't know. If I vassalize it, would I break the back of the Mamluks and, essentially take them out? And that's sufficient for what I want. My feeling is mixed on this, right? Like, is it that different from conquering them? Have I not broken their back? Still, they can revolt and turn into Egypt again, right? It doesn't change much. The only thing it changes is whether they're still dynamic. And I feel like I should have broken their back. So, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say if you conquer something and vassalize or conquer all of it, you get rid of it as a DNPR. Now, if you remember, I believe they're not a requirement in this scenario. Like, they're considered an advanced rule, an advanced suggestion, right? Dynamic DNPRs. If you want to start with the DNPRs on the map, we suggest using these three. I like the idea of being able to break them, being able to make them not DNPRs anymore. Certainly I did that with the conquest of Naples, complete conquest. Here I can't do a complete conquest. I actually probably didn't need to siege these, simply because all I need to get the peace result I want of vassalization is a partial victory, and I must occupy the loser's capital and at least one loser's de jure province in another area. Okay, so I would have to siege one of these, but not both. I increased my chances by putting it in both. So that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for a vassalization. We're going to say it breaks their back and gets rid of all their counters so that they're not really... Because otherwise, you know, I've got this shit under my stuff for the rest of the game. And I just don't feel like that that applies. Whereas their real core, it does make sense to me. All right, I'm going to break for a while because I'm kind of hungry and I feel like I've done a hell of a lot to get through 3 countries. Hey, you know, it's great when the designers are watching what you're doing. And this is a big enough game with enough people doing videos on it and everything, although I think most of them did them earlier than mine, that I didn't really expect that. But they are, slowly. And I got a couple of clarifications, well, one clarification and one discussion thing, because I didn't want to look through the decks that describes it. So, the... what is it? The situation where I had troops being built with a rebel in the same area, that should trigger an immediate attack. Now that part of why, yeah, I had some misunderstanding, which was part of why I leaned towards the decision that I made, which was the wrong one. But the other thing is, and we can just ignore that, because that had to do with why the rules had to be written in a particular way to handle NPRs whose pieces aren't on the map. But yeah, the rule that I was looking at just consistently said hostile, or the one rule I was looking at said hostile NPR, but it didn't cover rebels. And it created this whole mess. Because I was reading the rules too literally, essentially. And then, you know, it becomes a question of, well, what do you read into it? Do you read into it that something else attacks that's not listed? Or do you, you know, and follow sort of a general rule, which is what I would do if I wasn't carefully parsing through the rules to try to get that. The other thing, and I'm much, much happier with this, because it makes no sense the way I was playing it. It made no sense to me at all. The other thing has to do with the ruler distributions, the ruler death distributions. Those are apparently an equal number in each deck, but they're split between the half decks. What that means is they're probably alternating for the scenario, but there's no guarantees that you'll get, you know, that if you created a scenario, you would get the same kind of distribution that you get. Which is to say that the specific scenarios that they set up for you are designed to be more likely to give you historical birth and death dates. I still feel like there's something weird going on with that, not in terms of the rules or whatever, just in terms of like what the impact is on players, what they know and what they don't know, and that all of a certain ruler dies at an exact same time, or a certain personage dies at a specific time. I don't care so much with advisors. I mean, and advisors are probably part of the reason why you can't track it more in a more detailed fashion. But I really do care with the rulers, because they feel more important to me somehow. I don't know if they really are. Because a big advisor is, you know, if you've got a +3 advisor, that can be as good as what the ruler is kind of bringing to you, right? This guy's only bringing 4 at interregnum. Well, Charles II only brings 3. So in terms of total cubes, that can have a huge impact. Anyway, back down to cooking my pizza. When I started on my way down, what I found out was, Jesus, I spent like an hour up here, most of it on video. Not good. I don't like eating up that much time on my stupidity, which is me trying to puzzle things out. I know some of you kind of like that, so I don't know. It's okay, I guess. It's just I think better when I'm not on camera, I think, and it's hard to tell. But also Clash of Sovereigns showed up, which is, for me, a long-awaited, I don't know how long, you know, when I'm going to get to it, but it's a 7 years war. I'm sorry, it's a War of Austrian Succession version of the 7 years war game, Clash of Monarchs. So that's kind of exciting. All right, on to the French. And there I go, wasting more time, right? A development card out of my hand. Marie, who could be my queen. But I have Louis XIV showing up. And I think I'm going to trigger that to change an area, maybe this counter-reform area, over to Protestant. And try to seal the doom of the counter-reforms. If I went Protestant, I want everybody to have to pay the pain. You could make some argument that I should have probably fired the event off first. I don't know. I wanted to get this thing played. I've got an admin cube I can move, but I could also do a reorg and get more military cubes to start quelling some of this unrest. I'm going to have a lot of unrest, and that's going to cause serious problems. It's kind of interesting, and I wouldn't expect this game to cover it. But it handles one side of the religion versus unrest, which is people who of different religions are going to form an unrest issue. But there's another side to that, which is an area that's heavily on unrest may be more likely to be switching religion. There's so many problems, and this may be kind of the revolutionary ideals, right? There's so many problems within the country that new philosophies and such not become more attractive. Again, it's not the focus of the game. I got no problem with it, you know, not directly dealing with it, especially since the computer game doesn't. It's got this weird balancing act they have to do, and nobody's colonizing. Everything's too much of a problem right now to be colonizing. Spain's situation, I got to deal with this, right? That's going to take 2 military cubes to cope with. Move in or build and siege. I've got to deal with all the unrest I have, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 military cubes for that. Well, obviously I can't do this, right? And then on top of that, I've got the chance to start changing the religions of things. That's the thing I'm going to do first, though. I'm going to start screwing with religion. I'll turn that counter-reform. This is now a different cluster. So now on Europe, on the mainland of Europe, we're getting 2-to-1 counter-reform versus Protestants. Of course, if the Protestant section gets divided in half or something, then it will also. But the fact that there's very few counter-reforms isn't that big a deal if I have a double effect. Especially since this is probably not a key area that this one big thing is going to try to take. One thing I wanted to touch before I get to the English turn, which I just did. I kind of wish, so this is kind of the national goal, right? The Protestants expelled. And it can be for either religion, so that's kind of cool. I like that, and it's flexible. It doesn't have to be Nantes. It doesn't, you know, or is it Nantes? But that's one of the things where I feel like it would be kind of cool if it wasn't nationally linked. Of course, it's a big deal, you know, for France itself, and it had a lot to do with the character of France. It's linked directly to Louis XIV. It's just, you know, it's the kind of thing that I feel like could be anywhere, you know. Like the inheritances, I feel like they could be anything. You could, basically, this would be more of a Empires of the Middle Ages type solution, where cards are more generic, where something like a royal marriage, an inheritance card that allows you to just vassalize, you know, subjugate kind of does that, but an inheritance card which would let you take a royal marriage and basically convert it into something. Now, it's got kind of the, you're playing God with stuff, you know, shit like that I kind of don't like about hold cards. I kind of wish, again, this would be more of an Empires of the Middle Ages type thing. You draw a card and, ooh, you have, you know, a royal marriage issue, and it causes, you know, one of two things. Either if someone has a marriage with you, maybe they, you know, inherit you, or get a disputed succession claim on you. Or if you have any royal marriage claims anywhere, one of them at random kind of devolves onto you. Not another major player, but whatever. But maybe another major player just turns into this kind of disputed type situation. Anyway, this has some of that in it. Of course, it's player choice, right? In a lot of cases, there's too much player choice. I prefer more randomness in my game. The computer game has more randomness in it. This plays more like a Euro, where the players have more agency. Okay. To the English, what the hell did I do? I raised up an army, which is going to cause a fight, as per the rules clarification. I built my army. I actually took a loan this time instead of doing trade or whatever. I may have already done trade, and yeah, I did trade, and it was okay, but it wasn't sufficient. But I want to keep an exploration token available, although there are reasons, you know, not to. I don't have that many cubes, and exploration's risky, and I may lose my ship from it, or, you know, whatever. But ships are easy enough to build, right? Okay. No generals on either side. English have janissaries and cannon, and I've got cannon present. I kill the enemy. I got 2 hits on them. But they hit me once, which is fine. We've destroyed them. We get our cube back, and that'll allow us now to siege. That's not London. That's like, I don't know what, Southampton? I think it's Essex. No, it would be Wessex. No, it's Essex. What the hell? Yeah, oh God, east-west. Can't keep track of that shit. Oh, you know, I've made my way around, and this is actually a good time for me to go downstairs and take a break. I know I haven't played very much, but I kind of like getting back to the beginning each time. And I was feeling the tug and came up here. Maybe I'll make it up fairly soon. Okay, so I had one of those moments where I'm like, hey, have I been cheating? Let me look something up. And it turns out I have. Not a whole hell of a lot, but a fair amount. It's just something that bothered me. When I look on here, suppress unrest, 1 military per province. Okay, great. Gives me the page to look up, but you know, it seems like a pretty simple thing. So I'm like, okay, let me count up the Austrian provinces that I want to unsuppress, and I got 1, 2, 3, but. And this is exactly what I was afraid of. And I think I did look this up before, found out the rule, but because there's all these little tiny, you can't do this if this, you can only do this if this, you know, kind of rules that aren't going to be able to be expressed over on that. That's crowded enough. I do have to look it up. And yeah, you can't suppress in an area with enemy units or rebels. I had found that earlier, but the important one, provinces that you occupy. I didn't bother reading the whole rule. I did at times, but I didn't bother reading the whole rule when I was looking up for the rebellion one, because I was like, well, if there's rebel armies in there, wow, it seems a little weird that I could do that. No, I can't. Okay, but I also can't do it here. But I think that's what I'm going to do anyway, not cheat, mind you. But I'm just going to get rid of 3 of these unrests. That puts me in much better position for dealing with, ooh. Yeah, tolerance is useful for rerolls, whether or not it's religious. Anyway, I don't want to face a whole hell of a lot of unrest in any case. That's been problematic. But now the Austrians are using up cubes. Too bad Turkey already went to war with the Egyptians, right? Otherwise they could, you know, turn on a dime and have instead mobilized against Austria. Turn on a dime being a little silly, you know, way to look at it, because quite honestly, these turns are like 15 years each. So, you know, there's quite a lot of room. There's more than enough room for a war, a peace, another war, you know, and all that to be happening. But the game doesn't give you that flexibility, because once you start a war, you're stuck in it. You can't just sort of clear it out. And the resolution of the war all happens at the end of the turn. It never overlaps. I mean, a war can overlap the end of the turn, but like you could wipe out an enemy's army and he builds another one, but then he doesn't get a chance, you know, because near the end of the turn or whatever, and it just weird shit happens where peace ends up enforced on you. And there are similar issues in the original board game. Similar, not exactly the same. And I may have actually changed the rules to allow you to win a total victory in the midst of a turn. I'm not sure. That's quite possible. Because peace is certainly something that's handled outside of the military rounds. Of course, the turns there are only 5 years each, but, and I think I think there are less I can't find the word, causal relationships down the line, whatever the fuck. There's a word I want, but my brain doesn't work like it used to. And yeah, essentially, you're just doing military and movement actions during the action, the equivalent to the action phase in that game. And neighbor, whenever he plays with his garage, it makes this sound that sounds like a tree falling or something. Really freaks me out. Like when I first moved in, I would run, "What's that?" But it sounds like my fridge too. It makes a very similar bonk noise. But you know, so there's less of a problem. You're not like prevented from doing diplomacy or something like that because for 15 years because of the war being in effect. But anyway, I don't even know where the fuck I'm going with this. I'm going to Poland. Poland's easy. I got 2 army men. I dropped 2 cubes. And I conquered 2 of these. I'll figure out which ones. Taking stuff without putting little cubes on it. You know, it's not that big a deal because these wars will probably be resolved in time. But if wars last for a long time, you really have to have your occupation markers there. I'm trying to remember what I was going on about. But anyway, I don't know how to get around, you know, this kind of thing. I really don't. Like, why? There's something about these rules that makes me, I read things, I understand them, and then I lose track of them. And they're not they're not able to be expressed on the player aid. I completely understand that. Maybe the only way to deal is to flip through the rulebook and ignore the player aid until I internalize almost everything. Of course, almost everything isn't everything, and I'll still fucking make mistakes then, and they will get embedded in my process. Whereas, I don't know. I just don't feel like that happens with most games. There are others where I've had this problem, and I'll point to Totaler Krieg. That was one of them. Unfortunately, with this game, I feel like I had an idea of what was going on that was much better than in Totaler Krieg, or for that matter, in one that I like a little better because. So here's the weird thing. Let's go on another tangent ride. Totaler Krieg is like really rich in terms of storytelling and in terms of getting into some details and stuff, and it kind of reminds me of EU in some ways in terms of cutting some deals that I wouldn't cut when designing a game. The other one is Unconditional Surrender, which I feel is more of a pure competitive game. It cuts away, and so the interesting thing, and I probably actually like Totaler Krieg better, but Unconditional Surrender is easier to approach because it just kind of shunts aside that, okay, let's go into all these details and everything, and gets to the crux of like the competitive aspect of a World War II game. It's still a good game, and it's still historically believable and whatnot. It's got some interesting choices, but Totaler Krieg, unlike say WIF or A World at War, doesn't try to detail everything. It abstracts a lot of it away. Speaking of which, I really ought to get back to Cataclysm at some point. That was an intriguing system. I never get to look back at games, you know. I'm hoping the fact that I can't buy used games anymore easily, and that I don't have enough money to just buy up lots of new games, is going to let me kind of catch up on what I have. But my game output, my output of play time is decreasing as well. Just my addiction, by the way. I mean, like, I've been watching fucking Viva La Dirt League videos a lot. And I try to go to sleep listening to, I guess, podcasts, but they're on YouTube as well. And I listen to them and watch them on YouTube as background noise. So, guy Simon Whistler, who, it's really weird. I kind of, like, I don't know why I'm watching a lot of his channels, but they're interesting subject matter. He doesn't know shit. He's just reading them. He's got a nice enough voice and all. There's no problem with that. But, you know, I find him kind of annoying, but not terribly so. And I also find him kind of enjoyable in some weird sort of way. I don't know. Anyway, what the fuck am I doing? I'm doing the Turks. Okay, well that should be easy enough. I have cubes. I need to take that. That is a prerequisite of everything that I'm doing. So in we go with our army. It's a big army. Turkey has, let's walk so that we can make people dizzy. We're going kind of slowly. Turkey has a big army, and this was something else Kalasmar pointed out that I had forgotten about, haven't had a need for. I think it may be all Muslim powers. I don't know how many other how many other countries that are capable of being players can be Muslim in this game. You know, I mean, conceivably they could be, but I don't know if there's like cards for the Crimea, you know, as a nation, which makes it kind of less playable as a country. You can throw in garbage instead, kind of like the Ulm scenario. The Ulm scenario has this weird cards for Ulm to make it potent, to match somebody's YouTube coverage or Twitch coverage of whatever, of one of their campaigns. Okay, so I spent my cube. So the thing that I was reminded of, instead of using 3 white dice, they can use 3 cav dice as their basis. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but maybe if you had noble knights or something, that would actually make sense, where horses are cheaper or something. Sieges are too important, man. So I end up having lots of infantry. And infantry's cheaper, and it's better. It's just better. Cav, there are a couple of cards that make Cav useful, I think. Okay. So it's all I remember. So I have 4 dice, 3 plus 1 for the leader, and all the fun toys for the Turks. I need to draw a leader. Oh, I need to draw a leader, or I need to place my leader for my army, unless I have one. If I have one, I might consider it. Okay. I need to draw a leader for the Mamluks. They get one. That's not good. Of course, blue dice don't really help that much, because all they have is infantry. And how many do they have? Well, quite a few, actually. Fucky, fucky, fucky. They have a lot. Maybe I don't want to do this. Give me my cube back. Well, I drew my leader. Fuck. Too late. Okay, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 armies. Because I don't control the sea. Not that I could. The Mamluks have a bigger navy than I do. Because the problem is, these are adjacent to there. Even though I got troops in them, and I've defeated their forces. All right. This is not good. But I get 2, 3, 4, 5 hits on them. Yeah. They only get 2 base dice and then 2 artillery dice for their leader. But they have a lot of potential hits. They only hit me once, however. They would retreat if they could, but they can't, so they won't. They can't because it's their capital. They would. However you want to look at it. So 4 dice, and now it's over. It's just, that's enough to kill them. They do 2, and almost wound me. They can't do more than 2. I'll keep my yummies. The Cav especially, because it's just more expensive. That gets me my cube back. The leader goes away. And now we're established here. And now what I need to do is I need 1, 2, 3 cubes to siege this. And then I need 1 more cube to take at least one of those. Unfortunately, that requires a rearg. I think France is going to spend a development cube to use missionaries. Convert this to Protestant. I can do this because it's the missionaries. I don't have to completely own the area. And that strengthens my realm. I've really got only 1 Catholic area left. Kind of neat. Of course, I got a lot of unrest. Wish I could get tolerance, or I don't have the points for it. A big question, what happens to this? I changed the religion of this Protestant area to Counter-Reformation. Does it keep the religious marker? And what does it mean if it does? I think that just turns into a normal revolt. This might be not well spelled out because this is just an optional rule. If a religious occupy your capital, I'm left with a, gosh, I don't know, but since the religion is the same, I think I have to do it this way. Doesn't make a lot of difference. It still impacts me very much the same way. So what do the Spaniards want to do? Good question. Do I want to march in there, or do I want to suppress unrest? Or do I want to change religions to things using my missionary capability? My missionary capability is very powerful. I can inject it out to here, which I really like the idea of. I think the most important thing is to get that unbesieged. Why? It's not causing me much harm. It really isn't. It seems weird, but a rebel area is not as bad as unrest, I think. So, next choice. I could spend all 4 cubes and clear the unrest in places. Then I have a whole shitload of diplomacy cubes and I can only move 1 of them. All right, screw it. I'm marching. It's what I want to do. I'm just really disturbed that for game reasons I don't want to siege that, but I feel like it's probably what I should be doing. Because the English have artillery, you can take this off, and that gets rid of this cube. Austria is going to go counter-reform. Luckily I have these coin, the Gallic one. I have an extra set of pieces I got at Constant World. I'm going to use these to represent the Catholics. You know, the bear doesn't look very Catholic, or the boar, so I'm going to put it this way. So now they are counter-reform. Does its second set of sieges here, taking that over. Well, what we're going to do that's left, we basically have a lot of diplomatic cubes and up to 1 other cube of something else. Man of the Church could allow us to convert something. We got to decide if we want to go counter-reform as well. There are definite advantages to it in terms of fighting this Protestant wave. As though counter-reform can't move into Orthodox areas from the infectious religion. They can move into them, though, based on things like the Man of the Church card or whatever. So I could turn Orthodox areas into counter-reform Catholic, or Protestant for that matter. And I can turn Muslim areas into Protestant. It's just they won't get infected. That the Turks only want vassalization. They don't need to conquer everything. They have to occupy the loser's capital in at least 1 de jure province in another area. I'm going to just spend 1 cube to use my artillery to capture their capital. I only have to occupy the capital province, not the entirety of the area. And then I'll use another cube somewhere else. That'll save me some cubes. Good move. This is going to play their event. I've decided I want to expel the Catholics. Okay. France may change the religion of any one of their areas to match their state religion. Ugh. Well, we need another color or another counter. We'll take a blue piggy for the Protestants. And put that here. Okay. I gain 2. Weep. By adding unrest to 1 thing and exhausting 2 soldiers. Okay. So this was the area I changed. I have to add an unrest and exhaust. Fair enough. If I couldn't do those things, I don't think I could convert the religion. If I had tolerance, I would lose it. But importantly, I gain a military cube, which makes up for the unrest that I got. I'll be able to convert that. It's not a plain win, but it's also not a lose. And Louis XIII is replaced by the very good Louis XIV. There's a little bit of military capability. Historically, I don't think he led an army ever. So that's kind of nice. He has a very high military cube rating, but he's not a good general. So you don't want to use him as a general because you'd be risking, aging him out or whatever, getting him wounded. Spain sieges their small town. Again, start to think about who this Oliver guy was, right? He moved from, I don't know what, someone who took over in an era when faiths were all mixed up, may have tried to resolve things in that sort of way, in a revolutionary sort of way, had ideas about tolerance, maybe, you didn't get it. So not many ideas about it. But his eventual revolutionary decision was to go to counter-reform and make the state truly Catholic in a way that it hasn't been. Remember, the Inquisition was never imposed, even though it was a goal up there or an idea. And Spain has had a lot of religious problems due to that. Now we're fixing it. We're finally fixing it. I love the storyline of this sort of I don't know what, but this purist, religious purist fanatic taking over in Spain by overthrowing the kings. It excites me somehow. I don't know why, just because it is different from history, but it has echoes of history. I have to reverse that because we forgot to read the next event. Next event is volatile cost fluctuations. All players must pay medieval bucks equal to half their tax income. Somebody commented on one of my videos, medieval bucks. I think I said it earlier, way earlier, so now it's kind of stuck in my head because I saw it in the comment. It may have even been in a different game. Plus 1 ducat for each deployed exhausted land unit, and 2 for each loan they have, and gold province they own. Gold provinces are going to be hard to detect. Before paying, they have to choose to debase currency, losing a stability but only paying half, or paying the full amount and gain a stability. And then what do we got? Pirates and I think that's a vassal breaks ties. I don't think that severely impacts Spain. They really don't want to play this under any circumstances. Yeah, we really don't want to play that. Well, if we play it, we get Charles II, which, if somebody else plays it, we get the option. And that's the main thing. We don't like the event and don't particularly want it. And we certainly don't want the ruler, so we cannot play it because we don't want the ruler. If we play it, we get to choose which way the event goes. But luckily for us, if you want to put it that way, Spain is not in, the competition here. You could say Poland's on the outside of it, and then Turkey and Austria are the ones really fighting it out here. And everybody else is kind of like, why don't you two go have a war? See who wins. Which probably will go badly for Austria because out of everything that's going on, everyone could pick on Austria if they're in a big war. No one can really do shit about Turkey. Where am I? I'm on the English. Which want most is a ruler, and they don't have one. I could fiddle around with my unrest. I could screw around with my goals, maybe drop a couple cards and get one. Might get a ruler that way. I can't play the exceptional year because I have that, but these two advisors would be very helpful to me towards being able to cope with having an interregnum. I'd have like, maybe an above average king. I'm so used to the empires of the Middle Ages ruler ratings, where an average rating is 3, right? Your rulers in that game have ratings of 1, 2, 3, 5, and 9. It might be a 4. I don't think so. Where this is their modifier to the rolls and the combat values and stuff like that. So like average value of 3, a 1's not that much worse than average, right? So the worst leaders you can have in a particular same things basically, administrative, diplomatic, and military capabilities. The worst leader you can have isn't that much worse than an average leader. But the good leaders, the 5s and some, ones with a 9, man, they just keep doing the things they're good at, and they can live forever doing that. Well, not forever, but they can live quite a long time doing that. EU, the original EU, kind of lifted that. But I feel like the numbers, first of all, the numbers went, I think, not just 1, 3, 5, and 9. I think they went through, or 1, 2, 3, 5, and 9. They went through the entire gamut. So you've got 7s and stuff like that, which I like better. I like that broader span if you're just going to roll numbers, essentially. And there are historic leaders. When historic leaders come in, they're usually like 999 or something like that. But there are also, you also roll up your leaders quite often. Here there are more historic leaders in the game, and I think there are in the computer game as well. You could play with only the historical leaders in the original EU. They just give you a span of who they all are. I really don't like that kind of play. Like, I don't mind. I kind of like what this is doing. It feels like a nice balance. You get the really important people, including the important good people and important bad people. And then you get a lot of randomness in there. I'd be perfectly fine with completely random as well, but then, it becomes very much and I feel like the original was very close to completely random. I mean, each country had maybe 1 or 2 special rulers in it. So what is England's problem? Yeah. They don't have a ruler. They have this exceptional year, which I'd love to play, but can't. I could cure all my unrest, conceivably. Can't cure this. And I think that's probably my best move. Get my country in as good an order as I can. That would cost me 2 cubes. Unfortunately, that would preclude me from being able to do an exploration action. I'd really like to do an exploration action. Is 1 unrest die roll safe? Probably. Probably. So, unfortunately for me, I wish I had an extra cube here. If this was my setup, I'd be very happy doing exploration. I'd do it with this. I'd get an extra check. I'd get an extra reroll with that if I wanted it. Settle in America. See, there's almost nothing left. There's Canada, right? Everything else has been taken. So I don't know if it's really worth rolling, but without a colonial claim, I'm not getting any cubes. I'm not building up anything. Whew. Can't go from B to C. B is over here. C is down here. C comes off that. Could go explore Africa. I don't know. I've got another goal. That might be worth it. I don't have any claims over here. I could fabricate one. Ooh, the Spanish. They don't have a lot of military, and they've got problems everywhere. They got problems everywhere. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? I'm going to resolve my unrest. I just don't think... and I'm going to do it this way. Okay. We're going to move this over and go down and play some raid, because the battle I'm fighting is done, and I got other shit I got to do. Literally. I got shit I got to do. I want to squeeze one out. Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound as good as it should. Before I go to bed. Austria played man of the church, converting Austria itself to counter reform. This is probably the only place I can do it, because I don't have Nuremberg there. And I mean, I could do it somewhere like the Tyrol or something, but I would rather start creating counter-reform areas out of Protestant areas, and this is the first such. Now, this is unlikely. So here's the thing. Depending on how you interpret... Why are we talking so slowly? Because we're trying to think while we talk. Depending on how you interpret the spread of religious ideas. So, a single token symbol which is not adjacent. There's an ordering here. Okay. If there are more clusters in play, and you've placed less than 4, place a new one. Okay, it's the auto-resolution that's the issue here. So the auto-resolution, spread infectious faiths into adjacent areas. Preference goes into areas with at least one, bleep, then to areas with provinces of higher total tax value. I think that's the preference for spreading to. And I think I was doing it wrong before, where I was looking for preferences to spreading from. So actually, reading this again, I would calculate the automatic processing a little differently. I would look at all the possible areas that could convert and find the one that matches the highest. Not what I was doing, which was first looking for the province that was the highest and sort of firing off the cluster that province was in, and then looking for what's around it. Got to be careful now, because there is potential for conflict where those are being auto-generated. Okay, anyway, that's what the Austrians did. I was having a tricky time figuring out anything they want to do. I could do a trade action. All I have is dip cubes. I could move one of those cubes over. That would allow me to take advantage of the man of the church, which I probably want to do. But, you know, the decline of the Habsburgs gives me a couple of cubes. I don't really need them, but what the hell? We'll fire off an event. And we're going to pick the name for an heir. Castile, Spain must offer royal marriages to 2 opponents, and if any accept, offer an alliance to one of them. I'm assuming none of this costs anybody anything. All of Castile, Spain's royal marriage partners gain a claim in an area adjacent to Castile, and you, Poland, gain 2 military. Again, I don't really need the military, but what the hell? Spain is not going to take Charles II. We don't want him. But we have to offer royal marriages up. Now, who do we want to give them to? Well, England might not be a bad choice, because they're so far down on the victory table. But there's sort of the thought of, gosh, maybe we don't want to be in a position where we're giving a royal marriage to anyone who can kind of reach us. So our choices are everyone but Turkey, because you can't have a marriage between the Muslim and the other, and the Christians. So honestly, I think my best choices are offering marriage to the Austrians, who can't have one, and to the Poles. And that actually creates a royal marriage. Royal marriages and alliances go both ways, I believe. I really should look that up, shouldn't I? Austria can't accept one, and if any accept, must offer so wait a minute. So Austria would get a claim to something adjacent to Castile. An area adjacent to Castile. Now there are lots of areas adjacent to Castile. Things like Algiers are officially adjacent. It doesn't say by land. So this is interesting. Does Austria want the marriage? That's a good question. There's an alliance there, not a marriage. Where do I have my marriages? I have a marriage here. I have one here. I want both of those. What's my third marriage? Hey, this one served its purpose, right? We too will marry. Okay. Now we have to offer an alliance. Now, we would have to give the alliance to Poland if they had it. However, we may offer it to Austria. Neither Austria nor Poland has an alliance available. So the question is, which one do we think is least likely to give us that? Or do we want to ally with one of them for a potential war with Turkey? Which might not be bad for us because of the balance of power. Balance of power will definitely help us in a war with Turkey. It's a good question. We can kind of chatter amongst ourselves while we look at it, but let's take a look at who wants to and who doesn't. Definitely does not want to. By the way, there might be reasons for Austria to give up their Venetian marriage, but the alliance with Lorraine is not terribly useful to Austria, so they will probably give that up. The Bavarian one looks valuable. For the Poles, their alliances are all up there in Pomerania. They'll probably give one up as well. Although there's some danger to an alliance in that it won't allow me to intervene in the royal marriage, but I don't really care about the royal marriage. So I'm going to offer the alliance to the more powerful military force of Austria. I don't think, so Poland is big, right? They have so is Austria. But you know, Poland would be, so the question is, do we want to go to war? Austria is less likely to cause a war with Turkey, we think, but we're really not sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll a die. Odd Austria, even Poland. We really don't know. Okay, we'll offer it to Austria. Austria will indeed take the alliance. They want it. And that puts a Spanish alliance marker, of which there are many, over here. Yep. Did we give them the marriage? We give a marriage there. We didn't give a marriage there. There's Austria. How come there's no Polish marriage in there? Oh, there shouldn't be. There's a Polish marriage there. Okay. So that happens. All of Castile's partners get a claim in an area adjacent to Castile. So that is Austria. Yep, they have one. And Poland both get a free claim. Ordering. Poland's the current player, so they have to place first. There's not a whole hell of a lot of interest to us that's adjacent to Castile. So we'll place it here in Aragon. And the Austrians might be more interested in, say, Algiers or something, but we have a potential for war over there already. Genoa is adjacent. Genoa is appealing to us. We'll play it there. Spain does not want this ruler, and they don't have to take it. That moves this, but some money gets played out, and one new card. Russian Imperial Expansion. How'd this end up in here? I wonder if it's supposed to be or if I randomized. I don't think I randomized. Let's see what we got here. Okay. This appears to be problems. This appears to be designed for the you're not playing with Russia in the board. You lose either a diplomacy or military, and if you have neither, you lose nothing. Military ambitions add 3 unrest and 9 rebels in areas adjacent to either Karelia, Moscow and Ryazan, or Astrakhan. Moscow. Okay, Astrakhan's down here. Moscow and Ryazan are there. What was the other one? Karelia. Karelia is up here. Okay, this is something Poland really doesn't want happening, but who's going to pay for it? You know, right? If Poland were winning, maybe somebody would, if nothing else is good. Okay, diplomatic potency, remove all cubes and alliances from one area adjacent to the Baltic Sea and one area adjacent to the Black Sea. That's a little bit more interesting, but you still have to pay to do it to someone, and it's got a vassal break. All right. Turkey makes sure to siege another area before the war ends, well, before the turn ends or whatever. This is sufficient for vassalage, so hey, we're good, and we save, you know, a cube at least. I don't know what else we're doing. Produces unrest. Spain does the same, focusing up in the Netherlands. I have just a cannon up there. It's not really a comfortable situation to be in. Unfortunately, though, that's using up all my military cubes. I have a bunch of diplomatic cubes. Yeah, I could use them for something. I'm not sure what at this point. I could throw some cubes in. I don't think I have any diplomacy cards, so there's really not a whole lot I can do. I'm not doing further exploration. I can do trade, but I got money. And the idea of just collecting money off trade just doesn't seem that valuable at this point. You know, once your economy is big enough, it's like, okay, screw trade, man. Which is so different from the original EU. So the original EU, your economy without trade was weak, okay? And that's why, like, England and the Dutch, especially the Dutch, are just these hugely wealthy countries because they have merchants all over the place, and they just collect this money. They don't, you know, they don't have to forego taking a military operation or forego using the money for colonization or something like that. It just sort of steamrolls. We saw the East India Company or whatever was somewhere. I don't remember where that showed up. Was it over here? May have gone away. It may have been something else. an event or something, but it really did not impress. Like, whatever the East India Company was, it didn't generate the kind of sort of snowball effect that kind of trading posts, etc., does in either the board game or the computer game. Now, is that related to something, is there something else that is functioning that way here? I don't know. It's really hard to tell. It feels like that's a major disassociation, though, which is that whenever you have colonies outside your home territory, they just start generating income for you in both games, and trading posts all the more, and trade merchant ships bring a big amount of money. The monopolies that you gain off having power, having the most merchant ships, gain a lot of money. So just huge amounts of money are coming off of trade in the versions in prior games that represented, that of this lineage. Okay, however you want to put it. That doesn't feel like it's the case here, and all that money was the fuel for everything you do. Basically, money was the limitation in all the other systems. Like, now I'm not sure with administrators and such, not those. So I vaguely remember something from the later computer game things where there were things that you did and they would set a timer, and you wouldn't get to do them you wouldn't get to do that kind of action again. And that might be where, these advisors and whatnot come in. It wasn't just a limitation on money like the original game and the original computer game were. So it fits a little better with the cube situation. So yeah, I don't know. But certainly in the original board game, money was your big limiter, and you got lots of money off of trade. You got lots of money off of lots of trade. Like if you had huge trade like the Dutch did, you could pretty much do whatever the hell you wanted. Now you had other limiters though, like army size was limited by your nation. So the Netherlands was never going to have an army the size of France's. In this game, every player has the same setup, 3 armies, 1 fleet. I got one big problem with the 1 fleet. The Spaniards can't have a galley fleet and a large ship fleet at the same time. Historically, they did. Historically, they did. So that's problematic, and you could argue France should be able to do the same thing. You could say, well, call them light ships, whatever, they're the same. Yeah, it is a big difference. The galleys are really cheap and can operate in the Mediterranean. So, I don't remember the timing. Lepanto was a victory, so that which allowed the Spaniards to prepare for the invasion of England out of the Low Countries. That didn't end up going anywhere, but that is. And then there's the Spanish Armada, which went to support that, right? That all worked together, And it's not like the Spanish galley fleets just disappeared because of that. They were still present and still holding the Turks to account to some extent. Anyway, on to the English after I run downstairs and such, not a bit. In interest in a little bit of fairness here, there is a hand-wavy argument, which is that historically the Spanish had to win Lepanto to be able to fund a different navy, a deep seas navy, although they had the ships present. But the limitation there was funding. It wasn't how many navies they could have, right? And at later times, you certainly broke things up into squadrons and whatnot, and the English were able to stage once France's navy was defeated in the Napoleonic Wars, the English were able to stage a navy in the Mediterranean, as well as they constantly had a navy in the Atlantic. So, it just feels artificial to me that there's only 1 fleet allowed. But it also feels a little weird that little tiny country can have a really huge army. Now, can they really? No, because they're not going to have the manpower to really have it. They could rely on mercenaries, but there's limitations to how many mercenaries you can hire in each hire action and everything. So it all kind of works out that a small country is able to have, is not able to have a big army. But it's more the idea of how many armies can you have focused. How many big forces can you have? So let's look at the Napoleonic situation. France in the Napoleonic Wars. How many armies did they ever have on the field? They certainly had one in Spain. What you're basically saying is that they never had, after 1808 or whatever, they never had more than 2 in the rest of Europe. You might be able to get away with that argument. You really might. You know, these are big areas. The armies are somewhat abstracted, etc. So 3 armies may be the physical limitation, you know, that just no country ever reached above, right? I think most countries kept themselves down to no more than 2. Austria, for example, would have an army facing in the west and another one in Italy at times. Spain had an army in Italy and an army in the Netherlands, and the capacity to put another army in Spain. So 3 feels sufficient, right? With the manpower limitations and everything, it feels okay. I think the fleets should be at 2 to give the same kind of awareness. I think everybody should have 2 fleets. Of course, that wouldn't fit as nicely, right? Paid their cubes. They're going to roll to see if they can get a 2. This is what they need to be able to settle in Canada. Or in Mississippi. Is Mississippi? No, Mississippi's too far. It's not optimal, but I'm willing to risk the ship on trying to just get that set up to do. Hey, I win. That's perfect. That is just perfect. That way I don't have to go to war to settle that. Very risky move, and one that I'm not sure was a good idea, because I could use those 2 cubes to solve my unrest problem, the 2 military cubes that I had. But hey, no grousing it, doing well. All right, that's it for tonight. I'm pretty sure. Nah, that's not only it. I think I'm going to load this up. First of all, I blathered quite a bit. And secondly, it feels like the turn is winding down. We've got people, nobody's passing yet, but it really does. The pools of cubes is dropping. It's not tiny. Hey, maybe we go with three 2-hour videos. Or is it 3 hours? Who knows? Yeah, it's insane how much video I'm producing on this, and I don't know. It feels right now. There's no way to maintain any kind of standards and quality across these.